Good afternoon, Chairman Mishler, members of the committee, and Director Dudich. My name is Tracy Barnes, and I have the pleasure of serving as Chief of Staff to Indiana's 52nd Lieutenant Governor, the Honorable Suzanne Crouch. Unfortunately, due to scheduling conflict, the Lieutenant Governor cannot join you here today, but she sends her utmost gratitude to each and every one of you. Along with her role as Lieutenant Governor, she also serves as the Secretary of Agriculture and Rural Development and has a number of statutory duties, which includes the responsibility for overseeing 5 state agencies. We affectionately refer to those 5 agencies as our family of business. The agencies included in our family of business are the Indiana State Department of Agriculture, Indiana Office of Tourism Development, Indiana Office of Community and Rural Affairs, Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority, and the Indiana Office of Defense Development. Additionally, the Lieutenant Governor hosts 2 agency liaisons that provide programming and support for specific initiatives that are priorities for the administration. Those agency liaisons are the Director of Veterans Opportunities and the Director of Broadband Opportunities. While each of these agencies and liaisons are very unique to their purpose and mission, they all have one major common theme, and that is focusing on supporting our communities across the state, especially our rural communities, along with the related industries that impact those agencies. When we assumed office, the Lieutenant Governor tasked us with one major goal, and that was to meet with each of our agency constituents and stakeholders to create a strategic plan that will serve as a roadmap as we move forward in the administration. We have met 4 out of 5 of those plans and will have them all completed by next summer. This is extremely important to providing us both a strategic direction for each agency as well as providing us an operational plan for how we can better fulfill those strategic goals within our agency, with other state agencies, and with external partners. Now let me tell you a bit about our family of business. First, the Indiana State Department of Agriculture. ISDA's mission is to support growth in Indiana agriculture by serving as an advocate at the local, state, and federal level, defining and nurturing economic opportunity in the food, fuel, and fiber sectors, and enhancing the stewardship of natural resources on agricultural land. Agriculture is a $31 billion industry addition to Indiana's economy, and our team in ISDA works regularly to maintain and grow those numbers. Let me briefly give you an update on 2 of the programs within ISDA. The first is Indiana Grown, which was created to help market and educate our locally grown agriculture-based products and goods. With a membership that has grown to nearly 400 members with at least 1 member in every county, we are creating an environment where local products have a marketplace and a better opportunity to compete with non-local products. Over the next year, we're planning to expand our programming to help our local producers prepare themselves for interstate and international export opportunities. The other program I want to briefly mention is the Soil and Water Conservation Program. In partnership with the USDA Natural Resource Conservation Services Agency, we continue to work to increase conservation practices on private lands and ultimately reduce sediment flowing into our Indiana waterways. Through significant data collecting and modeling, we are now providing real-time mapping to show updates on water quality throughout the state. In 2017, the General Assembly provided new funding for both of these initiatives, and we are greatly appreciative for that. Next agency I will discuss is the Indiana Office of Tourism Development. IOTD is dedicated to enhancing the economic vitality of Indiana through leadership and resource support to the Indiana travel industry for awareness building, tourism-related product development, and job creation. In the 2017 session, a tourism task force was created by the legislature. The purpose of the task force was to study and report on the structure, governance, and funding models in place for other state tourism offices. With the support of an industry consulting team and 5 in-state industry subject matter experts, we successfully completed that report as tasked and have submitted it to the General Assembly for their review. Another facet of tourism that we do not talk about often is the ability for the office to help encourage and impact the attraction of workers and residents into the state of Indiana. Through quality of place initiatives, the Office of Tourism has the ability to help communities brand themselves and market themselves to visitors and prospective residents. This is an area of tourism that we will continue to explore and expand upon in the near future. Next is the Office of Community and Rural Affairs. OCRA works with local, state, and national partners to provide resources and technical assistance to aid communities in shaping and achieving their vision for community and economic development. While OCRA has a number of programs that help communities thrive, 2 main programs are at the core of their programming. The Stellar program was launched in 2011 with 14 communities receiving Stellar designation over the years. In late 2017, we made a significant change to the program. We now require communities to collaborate and work together to create regional development plans and not just focus on their individual communities. So far, this has been very well received, and we will be announcing our first 2 Stellar regional awardees later this month. I would be remiss if I didn't mention broadband as a major problem impacting our rural communities across the state. Because this topic was a major theme during our strategic planning process, we embarked upon 3 primary actions. First, we created a new position within the LG's office titled the Director of Broadband Opportunities. The goal of this position is to help local officials understand how they can attract and encourage broadband development within their communities. Second, we launched a broadband planning grant pilot program with awards going to 5 communities. Those 5 communities are currently putting together broadband development plans that will help them gain an understanding of their current broadband conditions and needs, create a long-term vision of broadband in their community, and identify options for achieving that vision. And third, we held a broadband summit in October, which brought together broadband providers, locally elected officials, economic development team members, and government agencies to engage the public and stakeholders with information to accelerate broadband connectivity, improve digital inclusion, and support local priorities. Next, we'll discuss the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. The mission of IHCDA is to provide housing opportunities, promote self-sufficiency, and strengthen communities. Everyone can agree that all Hoosiers should have the opportunity to live in safe, affordable, good quality housing in economically stable communities. That's the heart of IHCDA's mission. Their charge is to help communities build upon their assets to create places with ready access to opportunities, goods, and services. One new program that IHCDA recently expanded upon is their Moving Forward program. By adding a rural development twist to an already successful program, IHCDA is focused on preserving and rehabilitating about 30 of the nearly 500 properties providing affordable housing units in rural Indiana that have become run down. In partnership with USDA Rural Development Agency, 3 developers will each work to keep affordable housing units in rural Indiana. USDA hopes to use this initiative as a model program for other states with dwindling rural affordable housing stock. On a different note, with the challenging situation that has occurred in East Chicago, IHCDA was a cornerstone in helping provide relocation support, site demolition, and education services to help the nearly 300 families being displaced by the lead contamination issue. IHCDA worked hand in hand with other state agencies and federal partners as well, and they are continuing to work with city officials on new development initiatives to restore affordable housing to that community. The last agency for me to discuss today is the Office of Defense Development. The mission of the Office of Defense Development is to grow Indiana's defense sector by promoting the defense assets located in Indiana. They work to create new products which preserve and grow Indiana's military installations as well as attract companies, both presently in Indiana and those interested in relocating to retain and grow the defense-related industry in Indiana. It is a little-known fact that Indiana has 10 military installations located within our borders. 9 of these 10 installations are located in rural areas of Indiana. The one metropolitan installation is the Federal Department of Defense's Defense Finance and Accounting Services, which is located here in Indianapolis. DFAS provides military pay and vendor pay for all branches of the military and hosts nearly 3,000 civilian employees. One of our major successes this year is the completion of the Department of Defense's Office of Economic Adjustment Grant Program. In 2016, IODD received $2.7 million grant from the Office of Economic Adjustment to execute 3 major initiatives: create a supply chain database, deliver a portfolio of assistance strategies for workforce and workload diversification, and the development of an Indiana entrepreneurial ecosystem. At closure, we have assisted 28 companies in diversifying their product and services portfolios in order to help them remain viable entities so that when needed, they can provide those much needed services to support our military initiatives as they continue to evolve and adjust. Our other major goal for IODD has been to create a collaborative voice for the defense industry in order to position Indiana as a major player in the world of defense. To accomplish that, we have begun holding regular commanders' roundtable meetings, bringing the senior leadership from all of our installations together to meet and discuss issues that impact them and ideas on how the state could help better support and grow their mission sets. We have also worked with the legislature to host about 4 defense caucus meetings to educate the caucus members on the various installations, their missions, and the value they bring to their respective communities. Well, that wraps up our agency list. I have one more initiative I want to mention, and that is our Next Level Veterans Program. The Next Level Veterans Program was created to attract those discharging servicemen and women to our state, matching them up with employers, welcoming them to our workforce and into our communities. As a true public-private partnership, the LG's office is working with 3 state agency partners, 3 nonprofit associations, and a number of private sector corporations to proactively inform discharging personnel about the opportunities, amenities, and benefits that Indiana has to offer. Additionally, IHCDA, our housing agency, has been working to provide additional resources to help with the recruitment efforts through relocation assistance and other incentives towards veterans home ownership. Again, working to build our communities to improve the quality of place and life for Hoosiers. As I said at the beginning, the Lieutenant Governor's Office Family of Business has a strong focus on supporting our communities and helping them grow and expand, especially those rural in nature. From the Lieutenant Governor on down, each of our employees work diligently to encourage sustainability and enrich the vitality of rural Indiana. Thank you for your time and attention and for the opportunity to present to you today. The Lieutenant Governor often reminds us that every dollar that comes to government has a name and a face attached to it and must be handled with serious consideration for the hardworking Hoosiers who earned it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a question here. So in your general fund, you're requesting an extra $1 million, which is basically a 45% increase. So what's the reasoning for a 45% increase in your general fund?
The $1 million focus is specifically for that Next Level Veterans program that I just finished discussing. It's to enable us to allow our team to be able to proactively get to our bases and do proactive recruiting and making that, providing that awareness of our offerings here in the state and the job opportunities.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Auditor's Office, Stacy Schneider. Oh, all right. Scratch that. I'm just reading what's written down. Whenever you're ready.
Now it is. Well, thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you and get a chance to represent my budget to you for the next 2 years. First, I'd like to introduce my Chief of Staff, Stacy. So she's a deputy, so she could be the state auditor if you want her to. And then also have Kendra Leatherman, who's my a new position that we created, which is a legislative director as well as our legal director. And then Courtney Everett, she is in charge of all the accounting and AP side of my office. So anything to do with budgets, she used to work for Budget Agency and works very closely with them. And then I have Brent Pluckett. He is the payroll master for state government. He's in charge of IT and payroll in our office. And then Matt Beck, another CPA that we hired this cycle to assist in the accounting and reporting. So with that, I'll just say I've been state auditor 2 years. But this is my very first time before the committee. I was appointed 2 years ago by Governor Holcomb to take Suzanne Crouch's place, who is now our Lieutenant Governor. And I am super excited to get started. I was previously the Allen County Auditor and then used to work in public accounting. And so Allen County is the largest geographical county of the state, but size-wise, the state auditor is a lot bigger. The state auditor is a constitutional office, and I'm sure all of you guys know this, but for the benefit of the audience that may be listening online, I like to say the state auditor doesn't audit. We are the chief financial officer for the state. And so the State Board of Accounts is the general agency that will do all the auditing in the state. It's a very common misconception about my job. We're in charge of calculating payroll for 35,000 state employees, and that means all types of work cycles, schedules, categories per state and federal law. We're also in charge of auditing, and this is where I think we got our name 200 years ago. We pay all the bills, and so while we're paying the bills, we audit them. And we make sure that the invoices are correct and they have the appropriation granted by you guys, as well as that the services are legal. And then another thing that we do is we work directly and closely with local units of government. We do all the calculations and distributing of funds that the state collects on their behalf. So if you think of income tax, excise tax, gaming taxes, all of those things flow through our office. And we work very closely with the Department of Local Government Finance as well in local government oversight. I'm also the administrator for the Hoosier Start Plan, which is the state's deferred comp plan. State employees are automatically enrolled in that, and the state matches a small match of $390 annually. I also sit on the MPERS board, which I believe MPERS was before you earlier today, but I'm a part of that oversight that sees TURF, PERF, the legislator's pension, and a few other pensions are part of that board. Another key role, I think, for my position is I'm one of the members of the Board of Finance. There are 3 of us, and we're there to ensure oversight, basically in making sure that the initial budget adopted by this legislature is adhered to, and if not, then they can come before us for a transfer. They can also come before us for, basically, we approve public fund depositories and common school fund loans, which I heard you got into a little earlier today. So during my first 2 years, the transition has been fast. We had to fill a lot of new roles. And we also started looking at centralized services to see if they could help our office and we could gain economies of scale. And so we've been working through those areas. I was able to hire 4 more CPAs within my current budget just to help get an accounting mindset and reporting and reconciliation. We've created an internal control department for our office specifically, which is reviewing all the processes and procedures and documenting them. It's great for succession planning, but it also has helped us look for opportunities to make efficiencies, reduce risk, and reduce opportunities for fraud. Last summer, just this past summer, June 18, we upgraded the transparency portal. The U.S. Public Interest Research Group usually does a survey every other year on that, and we normally got A's because we have always been the forefront. Our state has always been transparent when it comes to their finances, but they were looking for more analytical tools, and so they dropped our grade to a B, and so we immediately started working on upgrading that, and so we were able to do that in June, and we pulled a bunch of stakeholder groups together. Dave Reynolds and Ben Tooley were part of that, because while you guys are in these committees, a lot of times you want information that the people may not be able to have in front of them. That way you can look it up, see fund balances, see where maybe different agencies are spending money. And so we're happy to say that we were able to roll that out, but are continuing to roll out different phases as we go. And then other things that we're doing, we're constantly doing efficiency projects all the time. When you think of, you touch every state agency, whether it's payroll or paying bills, we're able to pay vendors quicker upon audit approval. We're using unique IDs instead of social security numbers. And some ongoing projects is we're still continuing with AP workflow or electronic payment processing. And that basically just says, if NDOT gets an invoice in Fort Wayne, right now they're routing all their paper through their own interagency approvals, then they're routing it to my office, and we process a lot of paper claims. And one of the initiatives from the previous state auditor, Suzanne Crouch, was to get that up and going, and she got that up and going on our side of the office, and we're trying to roll that out to the agency side as well, so it's completely electronic from start to finish. Another one is just getting everybody, all the agencies in the state, into our electronic PeopleSoft time module, and we're almost done. We have the Court of Appeals and a few more agencies. Some larger ongoing projects, some of the bigger ones that I wouldn't normally sign up for. But I'm excited to do this, but we're updating our financial software to PeopleSoft 9.2. It's the current software that we operate on. When we first implemented it 10 years ago, we haven't stayed with the upgrades. Every year there'll be, just like your phone system or anything, they get these updates. Well, we haven't done those, and so we are in the process of doing all of that this year and next year. We discussed going to the cloud, but it turns out our system is so customized that it doesn't make sense yet. And so when we get to 9.2, we are going to take a lot of those customizations off so that the cloud can be an opportunity the next time this needs to happen. And the other big project that we're doing, during the last budget session, we received approval to proceed with the purchasing and implementation of new payroll software because our current system is over 20 years old and will no longer be supported. I'm happy to say that we went through a process and were able to use licenses that we already own as a state. And now we're in the process of just trying to go through and determine the best ways to implement that going forward, which will be a big change for our agencies. And we are collaborating with Human Resources, which is SPD. I hate acronyms, so I'm going to try to explain those away. Information of Technology, their office, GMIS, and the State Budget Agency on that. you will see I'm asking for the exact same appropriation that I've had in prior years. And I think that that's important as I'm going through all these projects to allow a little flexibility while we're doing these, to see as I'm saving money in other areas, sometimes I'm temporarily needing more during some of these projects. And so that allows me that flexibility. In closing, as the state's chief financial officer, my hope is that you, the legislature, will view me and my office as transparent and helpful as you complete your work and complete your job. And with that, I'll take any questions. Thank you.
Secretary of State's office, and we'll just wait to see who comes. I won't say it. So we have the Secretary of State with us today. So anytime you're ready. I know we're ahead, but if we can stay ahead, that would be great.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to sit before you today to discuss our biennial budget request of this Indiana Secretary of State's office. You know that the Secretary of State's office has 4 divisions: auto dealers, business services, securities, and elections. And in the past, I've discussed each division and gone through that in our request. But for the sake of time today, I'm going to limit my comments to InBiz, which is part of business services, our election security needs and projects, and the operations side of the office. I know I'm not going to be able to discuss in breadth with you every request from the office, so my office is working on setting up appointments with all of you so that we have an opportunity to do that. I'm happy to answer any questions, however. Today I have with me my Chief of Staff, Brandon Clifton. I have my IT Director, Tom Vesley, the InBiz Project Manager, Jim Obermeyer, and also my Assistant Deputy Chief. Regarding InBiz, in 2016, our primary focus was on cutting red tape for Hoosiers as required by your legislative mandate. You charged Indiana and my office with building InBiz, Indiana's business one-stop portal, and I'm proud to report that since you funded that effort in 2013, Indiana has come a long way. InBiz has received consistent recognition and national awards. While such praise and awards speak highly of the InBiz team, we recognize the importance of your legislative vision. I congratulate you for the foresight to create this portal, and thank you for your continued support and partnership. So during the past years, the InBiz program leveraged the original capital appropriation alongside Secretary of State dedicated funding to amplify the legislature's vision, allowing InBiz to build far more functionality than originally contemplated. The project began with the Secretary of State, Departments of Workforce Development, and Revenue, and in 2018, InBiz developed deeper functionality for the original agencies, while also implementing new functions for professional licensing and the Attorney General, along with the emerging scopes for several additional agencies, such as Department of Administration, Hoosier Lottery, Environmental Management. The team also made dozens of enhancements through monthly system updates. Exciting developments have been partnerships with the cities of Evansville and Greenwood to pilot local permit filing through InBiz. So our plans for the upcoming period. The InBiz program currently has several major initiatives under development through 2019. Professional licensing. Feedback from the business community indicated a strong desire to have even more professional licensing obligations fulfilled through InBiz. InBiz will begin offering these services in the first quarter of 2019. The local permit filing, we have spent a substantial amount of time creating a streamlined intergovernmental process with the cities of Greenwood and Evansville for local permit filing, and both of these efforts are expected to launch in mid-2019. Other jurisdictions have expressed interest in improving services by offering permit filing through InBiz. Minority, women, and veteran businesses. InBiz and the Indiana Department of Administration began working together to make the process of registering as a MBE, WBE, or VBE business more efficient for Hoosiers. Streamlined processes for opening and closing business are also in discussions. In this effort, we expect to create cross-agency processes that lead to more efficiencies for both businesses and agencies. This will lead to an enhanced process, furthering Indiana's posture as a business-friendly environment. InBiz also works closely now with the Small Business Development Center. When our call center receives questions regarding a small business decisions, we refer with a warm transfer to the Indiana Small Business Development Center. This is really important for them as they have new requirements from the federal government regarding the number of contacts that they need to make, and so they're very excited that we're able to send them more business. But I think it goes without saying that one of the most important things we've done in InBiz, which is transparent to the business, is our geocoding project. So beginning in March of this year, every new business when they entered their address, whether it was in the Secretary of State's office or the Department of Revenue with a tax location, that business was geocoded. And it's very important so that tax units can get the proper credit for those businesses being in that district. And I understand that just recently, within the last 2 weeks, the Department of Revenue has applied geocoding to the 1.75 million existing legacy businesses. So that's very important. This session will be hosting an InBiz open house where you will be able to learn more about the project, its partners, and its successes. We do have a general funding request of $1 million. Although not budgeted or appropriated in the past, we have thus far been able to absorb funding requirements to acquire and retain technology personnel. In addition, the long-term sustainability in maintaining election cybersecurity requires the addition of a chief risk officer. An industry best practice is to structure and manage risk in a position separate from the administrative technology personnel. Under this plan, the chief risk officer will report to the chief of staff in parallel with, but separate from, the information technology director. Excuse me. InBiz and election security have changed the requirements of the office's personnel. The auto dealer community, including the salvage industry, has long fallen victim to fraud and abuse. And these cases are worthy of investigation and prosecution. However, county prosecutors don't have the capacities, the knowledge, the time to adequately pursue these criminals. So we would like to, similar to our securities division, prosecution assistance unit, add a PAU attorney into our auto dealers division. We believe that one attorney would be adequate. I think it's worth noting that we do not do the prosecution. We work up the cases and take those to the local prosecutors who determine whether or not those cases would go to trial. It's not the Secretary of State's office that makes that decision. I think it bears repeating for clarity's sake that we've had a long-standing policy to prohibit investigative or enforcement staff funding with dedicated revenue, so as doing so could create an actual or perceived conflict of interest. Regarding elections, you know that I'm the state's chief election officer, and I rely on the election division co-directors, Brad King and Angie Nussmeyer, to conduct the important day-to-day task involved with administrating elections. I want to take this opportunity to thank the General Assembly for your support over the years as we moved from federal to state funding for our elections. The numbers are not final yet, but I'm happy to say that we will have a turnout in this midterm election in the 50s, probably closer to 51%. Again, there's just a couple of counties we need to hear. And that will be the highest midterm turnout since 1994. So I emphasize it's the candidates and the issues that drive turnout, and that's exactly what we saw in 2018. We do have election security capital request as well, totaling $10 million. Since the 2016 election, Indiana has been working to modernize and maximize security through the implementation of cybersecurity projects across election infrastructure. Indiana has partnered with the Department of Homeland Security, that's the federal department, and Multi-State Information and Sharing Analysis Center called the MSISAC to assess risk and vulnerabilities, develop best practices, and provide access to 24/7 security information, threat notifications, and security advisors. In 2017, we implemented many cybersecurity improvements, which included cybersecurity training at the county and state level that covered spear phishing, implementation of security enhancements to improve password protections, implementation of multi-factor authentication protocols, and migrated to a new hosting environment that added security features. Indiana expanded its cyber footprint in 2018 through the sharing of election cybersecurity best practices to local election officials, conducted a risk and vulnerability assessment across the election infrastructure, and piloted a risk-limiting audit in our state's largest county to validate optical scan voting tabulation systems. Indiana also partnered with the MSISAC to install an Albert sensor on our state network, which is a monitoring solution that provides automated alerts of network threats, enabling Indiana to respond quickly when data may be at risk. For 2018 and beyond, obviously we need to continue to work to secure our elections and restoring voter confidence. So we are considering virtual private networks for electronic poll book connections and county-based Albert monitoring sensors. As emphasized by the FBI in 2016, multi-factor authentication is one of the most critical tools of cyber defense. As a result, this spring we conducted a two-factor authentication pilot with 10 of Indiana's 92 counties. The pilot introduced a physical USB token and a unique identifier to access the statewide voter registration system. Additionally, the pilot restricted access to working hours for each employee, which could be adjusted by county administrators. We learned a lot from that program, and we expanded it before the midterm general elections to over half of Indiana's counties. The remaining counties were required to use traditional two-factor authentication, and in the future will begin using the actual USB tokens. Furthermore, they'll work with the time restraints as well. This safeguard is designed to further restrict potential vulnerabilities to the statewide voter registration system, which mimic vulnerabilities of any database. Additionally, through the work of the Election Infrastructure Government Coordinating Council, that's a national group, a number of states participated in a pilot program to share election-specific threat indicators. From that pilot, Indiana being one of the first participants, a full Election Infrastructure Information Sharing and Analysis Center called the EI-ISAC has become operational. States have the options to put monitors on their election networks to track traffic, detect anomalies, and share with other states. Indiana was one of the first states to fund and install this monitoring service. In 2002, the Help America Vote Act replaced lever and punch card voting machines. With that federal funding, counties purchased two types of technology for tabulation: the optical or digital scanners called OpScan, or direct recording electronic called DRE machines. 58 counties use DRE machines, while the remaining 34 counties use OpScan. While I have no evidence that votes have ever been changed in on either type of machine, Congress has paid special attention to the theoretical vulnerabilities of the DRE supply chain, manufacturing, and programming processes. OpScan devices have not been part of that attention because they do tabulate paper ballots marked by the voter. DRE voting machines allow a direct vote on the machine by the manual touch of a screen. A DRE records the individual votes and vote totals directly into computer memory, which does not require the use of a paper ballot. There is, however, a paper trail within the DRE. More specifically, a DRE's paper trail looks like a rolling receipt where voters' choices are indicated. However, the voter cannot see this documentation. The heart of this budgetary request is to request support to migrate DRE counties to a hybrid model. Since DREs do not generate a paper ballot that the voter can see, the proposal is designed to purchase and/or fund current or new equipment with VPATs, or voter verifiable paper trails, for DREs, which allows the voter to verify that vote was recorded correctly. While we will propose to counties that they begin a multi-year strategy to supplement their DRE equipment with a VPAT, I believe that we should support this initial and unscheduled investment, especially in light of the limited time that remains before 2020. As opposed to a full-scale replacement of our county equipment to VPAT, I propose that the state replace or equip 10% of the state's current DRE tablets with a VPAT. In total, I anticipate that $10 million will be required to assist counties in this untimely purchase. This equipment will allow us to conduct risk-limiting audits, which are designed to sample a set of ballots to determine the level of consistency the sample has with the overall outcome. If the audit exceeds the risk tolerance, this provides a cost-effective investigative tool designed to detect tampering. We value 10% of DRE equipment upgrades at approximately $6 million. Also captured in the refined capital request includes project management services for our longtime elections partner, Baker Tilly, and which includes a $3 million request, $2 million for the Albert sensors, and $1 million for the project management, and also $1 million in cybersecurity support programs with the development of Ball State University's Voting System Technical Oversight Program and Indiana University's Center for Applied Cybersecurity Research. Most specifically, both programs are necessary to assist in the development and execution of risk-limiting audits assess constant changes in our emergency response capabilities and remediation activities, build regulatory control requirements into election equipment supply chains, and develop new testing standards that reflect current threats. Indiana cannot sufficiently meet the threat posed by Russia, North Korea, China, Iran, and others without the support and the prioritization of Governor Holcomb and the Indiana General Assembly. In years past, Indiana has served as a national leader in election technology. And in that time, Indiana's leaders have taken the necessary incremental steps to ensure that Hoosiers are well protected. This investment will advance Indiana's security posture well into the future and leave a lasting legacy on election security and integrity. I hope that you all have this PowerPoint. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like for you to take a look at it while I finish the conversation. I just wanted to provide you with a bit more tangible information of what we mean by voter verifiable paper trails, or VPAT. Today I have with me a VPAT prototype here from Microvote. Microvote is a company located in Indianapolis who holds election equipment contracts with 50 of our 92 counties. There are 3 DRE vendors in the state: Microvote, Dominion, and Hart. And to be fair, I plan to offer an illustration of each of the vendors' VPAT capabilities in my 3 budget presentations. Some of the benefits of Microvote's proposal include, and if you'll look at the slides, I'd appreciate it, cost. It's a low-cost option for Microvote customers since the component is an add-on feature to existing equipment, thereby eliminating the necessity of full-scale equipment. These are the machines that would be an add-on to. There's no wasted, unused ballots, or no ballot storage cost, and no pre-printing ballot cost. It's the simplest and least disruptive because county election staff do not have to learn entire new system processes. The majority of the election equipment remains the same, the majority of the election process remains the same, and the election support group relationships remain the same. It can preserve also, as a result of that, the benefits of the existing system. It's a fast, accurate tabulation system, results election night, not hours later or days later. It's a simple setup, it's very easy to use, and it has fast voter processing. It's also secure. There's a minimal chain of custody challenges. Paper selections are secured in a locked ballot box. They're not handled by numerous people numerous times. They're easy to secure and store. Paper selections are maintained on one roll together, not individually cut loose and less likely to be lost, less likely to be tampered with, and stacks of paper cannot be removed or inserted into the roll. Supporting these investments will take Indiana's election infrastructure to the next level. Thank you for your time and your consideration. Happy to answer any questions.
One question I have, it's dedicated funds, but it's a $3 million increase, and it's in the Electronic Enhancement Access Fund. But what's the purpose of the $3 million increase?
In the election
Well,
part?
it says the Electronic and Enhancement Access Fund. It's a dedicated fund. And right now you're at just over $1 million, and the ask is just over $4 million.
What is-
So I'm
That's the current balance of the dedicated fund.
gotcha.
We're not
thank
asking
you.
for an appropriation
Gotcha,
to that
gotcha.
fund.
Thank you. Any questions? Senator Taylor.
Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary, when I look at this microvote situation, I have to look at it from the purview of where I'm located at and what I've seen in my elections. And although we're not going to have this issue actually by happenstance, but not by legislature, you remember we have to count all our ballots at a central county. For those of you who don't know, Marion County is the only county that has to centralize absentee ballot counting, so it's be in one place. This system that you are proposing here would eliminate that. Am I correct?
Senator Taylor, what I'm discussing is the Microvote Infinity machine, which is already in place in 50 of Indiana's 92 counties.
Right.
So it would not affect any county that is currently using the op scans, which really and truly is the more favorable by academic and other scholars to use, is the op scan that Marion County uses.
Right, but,
This supplement is to make these 50 counties who have the DRE machine to have a paper trail that the voter can see.
oh, okay. So then now that they can have it a paper trail, so you're creating a paper trail for the 50 counties who don't have a paper trail like Marion County does.
Yes, the 50 counties whose voters cannot see the paper trail currently inside this machine.
Right, okay. So that would, okay, so it wouldn't necessarily affect Marion County then?
It would not, sir.
Okay, all right. The one thing that I always admire about your office is you're always looking for new and innovative ways to make voting easy. So I think that's a good thing. But how many different systems do we have across the state that different people use? You know, if I
We have a total of 5 different vendors in the state of Indiana.
and 5
They-
different
yes,
programs, right?
They've been approved by VSTOP, Voting System Technical Oversight Program out of Ball State.
Right.
And it's been traditionally, in the past, the county's responsibility to pick the equipment that's been approved by Ball State for use here in Indiana. And we have 5 different vendors currently.
So you could be in a different county and you could vote using a paper ballot, you could vote electronically with the addition of that, you could vote, we got any more pool machines?
Oh, no, sir.
Okay, all right, this one, I want to make sure.
Yeah. In 2002, the federal government appropriated monies so that we could replace punch card and lever machines. Indiana did that.
Yeah, we won't have no more hanging, we won't have no hanging chads in Indiana. So that being said, why don't we have just one uniform way? Why does it, and here's the reason why, because I think we're moving into the 21st century. If we're gonna make access to the voting box easier, sometimes, and I'm not saying this is done on purpose for my colleagues, sometimes legislation that we pass makes it harder for some people and easier for other people. Not by way of legislation, but just by the fact that we have 5 different systems of voting. So, for example, and I can only speak to Marion County again, going back to in Marion County, the absentee voters have to have a reason to vote absentee, right?
That's Indiana law, sir, yes. Yeah.
But again.
It's every
here's-
county that has to have a reason to vote absentee.
Right, but the reasons that are accepted in one county for another one could be different, depending on the election commission. The makeup of the commission,
The county election board, sir?
yes, county election board, right?
Well, their form is standard that's used throughout the state.
It's not what, okay, all right.
There's a
yeah.
form that's approved by the Indiana Election Division that should be used throughout the state.
Right. And the same thing should be accepted in one county as the other, is what you're saying, right? Because it's a uniform
The
law.
form is consistent, yes, and it should be
The
interpreted
form
the
is
same way.
consistent, is the decision to accept consistent?
If I circle reason number 1, it's accepted in Marion County, it's accepted in Hamilton County, it's accepted in Hendricks County. If I circle reason number 2, it's accepted in all of those counties.
But they don't have to. That's the point I'm trying to make. The election commission does not have to accept the reason in one county for the other.
Well, Senator, I would have to talk with our local county election boards, but I have not ever had a complaint that a county election board refused to accept an application for someone to vote by absentee because they didn't believe that the excuse that they used or the reason they picked was invalid.
Right, so there's been challenged. Okay, so now we've established that it hasn't been challenged. So now let's get to the acceptance of the ballot. The ballot itself is then submitted. And in different counties, depending on where you live, the way that that vote is counted is different, right? Depending on the type of technology you have.
Well,
Some counties put it through, let me give you an example. Some counties can put it through directly at the voting site and run it through the machine, and the machine counts it. Other counties have to take it to a central counting place and then put it through a machine.
Well, Senator Taylor, I will say that I do not believe that the precincts have the technology to run absentee ballots through any sort of counting device. Those are counted by the individuals who work at the polls. They are
Right.
not counted by machines at the precinct level.
Okay, so-
They are and can be counted by machines at the county offices, like your central count location, but they would not be counted by machines at the precinct level.
Sorry, I'm technically wrong at that, but they can be counted at the local precinct.
Some counties do that. Most of
Some
our
counties.
counties do not. I think we have about, I can't remember how many central count counties, but it's well over 30.
Right. So you're making my point. What I'm trying to say is, would it be better and more convenient for your office if everybody did it the same way?
Senator, I think elections are local, local, local. And it's what's best for that county that makes the difference. And that's why county election boards make that decision.
So do you think we should have county by county voter? So let me give you an example. So if Marion County were to say, we'll accept voting by mail, should that be done at the county level?
I think that's a decision for the Indiana General Assembly to make.
But I thought,
We do not have vote by, it's just strictly vote by mail in the state of
But if a
Indiana. It
county
has to
wanted-
be an absentee ballot, sir.
but if county, I understand that, but if counties want to change that,
They could not currently do that by state law.
so Marion County couldn't do it by
No,
state law?
they could not. No.
Oh, okay.
Not to do all mail-in voting, you're saying. and
Not
to
all.
do-
I said option. The
but
option
I don't
mail by
believe they
ballot.
currently have that option according
They
to state law.
don't, but they could, is what I'm trying to get at. Right?
If the General Assembly adopted that policy, they could.
Okay. All right. Last but not least, the technology that you're using here, you said it was approved by Ball State and VSOP. Is that what it's called? VSOPT, I think it was.
Vote, VSTOP, Voting
Yeah.
System Technical Oversight
Take it
Program
so-
at Ball
yes,
State.
yes.
uh,
Okay.
Goes through and approves every piece of election equipment that's used in the state of Indiana. They make sure they apply with federal law, state law. You know, they make sure that they're run through the labs, and they make sure they record the votes properly. All of that is done at Ball State.
And that's an independent third-party vendor who does that.
I
They
wouldn't
have
call
no
them a vendor,
connection.
they're service at Ball
Their
State.
service at Ball State University. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am happy to answer any questions individually if you have any in the future. Thank you.
Next up, we have the State Treasurer, Kelly Mitchell.
Yes, it is. All right, I'll dive in. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you. I'm State Treasurer Kelly Mitchell. With me is Chief Deputy Treasurer Michael Frick, who you probably know. I also have Chief of Staff Justin Grainert and Amy Corbin, who is our ABLE Executive Director. And I thought Catherine Seat was in here, but I think she's out in the hall. So first of all, just want to say that it's an honor to serve as your State Treasurer. Treasurer's office touches every Hoosier life every day, and it's a very fulfilling job to have. So our budget that you have in front of you has just been prepared to cover our operating expenses necessary to maintain and improve the current level of services for the operations that are prescribed for my office by the Indiana Constitution and by the Indiana General Assembly. I'm sure you know my primary responsibility is the safekeeping and investment of the monies paid into the state treasury. By meeting this responsibility and many others that have been given to this office by statute, the Treasurer of State's office serves the citizens of the state of Indiana as well as state agencies and local units of government. We are responsible for the investment and accounting of the state's portfolio, including the state's general fund and over 70 trust funds, with an approximate average daily balance of about $7 billion. In addition, we are responsible for providing treasury management and banking services for the state and its agencies. All of these responsibilities are executed by a staff of just 15 full-time employees. So our biennium budget request seeks to continue the funding for 2 positions that were granted to us 2 years ago that were not immediately filled. We have, with 15 of us, it takes time to work out where we want a role to fit. We will look at this very much as a line of succession because there's so few of us. All of us carry a lot of responsibilities, and we want to make sure that we are covering the responsibilities and roles to the best of our ability. We also, though, would like to add a new investment position. That $7 billion I mentioned earlier is managed by just 2 people, and if one is out of town and one is sick, there's no one available to do that. So we believe that just in risk management and in the ability to take more time to invest with planning and strategic planning, that we'll have a better result for the state of Indiana. So rather than spread our staff too thinly, we hope that this will help maximize our ability to perform our fiduciary responsibilities. Just to conclude our budget request, we'll continue our strong investment performance, emphasizing, of course, safety and liquidity, and we'll create more internal processes overlap, meaning cross-training, so that we are indeed able to cover all responsibilities, procedures, and functions. If there aren't questions in particular about this, I can go right on to the ABLE budget, or I can take questions about the Treasurer's Office budget and then talk ABLE. It's just continue? Okay. So our ABLE, we're excited. We celebrated the 1st anniversary of ABLE this year at the end of July. We have just under 300 accounts open and over $900,000 in assets under management. I am really proud that the average account balance for ABLE is over $3,000, which means that Hoosiers are using this as we intended, being able to save more than that previous $2,000 limit. So that's been really exciting to see. We have, of course, just continuing administrative costs, but what we really want to do is expand outreach and marketing. Because ABLE is new nationwide, we're all still learning best practices and what works from other states and from each other. And what we're finding is the marketing for the 529A, the ABLE program, is very different than marketing for 529, the College Choice program. Because the people that want to learn more about a 529A really want to talk to somebody. They really want to get specific questions answered because it's a complex thing to be able to explain. And so the time that we need, the amount of touches, as we call it, in order to encourage someone to open an ABLE account is far greater than it is for a 529 account. So we believe that having someone to help our single person on staff market the ABLE program will really benefit its success. We also hope to, of course, just raise the level of awareness of ABLE. It's just been Amy traveling the state, of course, with help from us. But if for some reason Amy's not there, there really is no one being able to just focus on ABLE. So that request is in front of you. I know that every dollar that my office earns in interest is one less dollar that we have to ask taxpayers to cover. And I take that very seriously, and we put forth our best efforts to maximize and safeguard the money that is entrusted to us by the citizens of Indiana. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question about the 529 plan. So do you know what the fiscal impact has been of adding the K-12 tax credit to the 529 plan?
I don't believe we have those final numbers yet. It was just this year that that was added. So we would be able to have some numbers soon. It hasn't been tremendous that we're aware of. I don't think, do I have those numbers? No. Did you all hear that? We'll have them by the end of this week? Okay, and we'll
I
send
know
them
what
on.
what we guesstimated, and I'd like to see how close we were to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand. You're looking for new positions, and one is to market the able. But don't you get any assist from the organizations in which the members are that would benefit from able?
As far as marketing and raising awareness, yeah, absolutely. The ARC has been very helpful. You know, people have asked our director to come speak to smaller groups and communities that are focused on this. I mean, that is our avenue that we use for, it's best utilized for marketing, but it's still only one person who goes and speaks to these groups or goes and hosts a booth at a benefit fair or something like that. And so to be able to be in northern Indiana and southern Indiana at the same time would often be very beneficial.
It just seems like that's really their responsibility. I mean, they're serving those members, and that they should, in a sense, bear the burden. They see them every day. So they should have access to that information as opposed to, I mean, I can't imagine it's burdensome if someone in your staff is trying to run around the state. With respect to scale and reducing costs, so you talk about reducing costs for the 529 plan, but I'm curious with respect to the Indiana State Police pension, which is the only one under your authority, so to speak. How do those costs administering that program, how does that compare to INPERS, for example, and their costs for administering pension plans?
I'm not sure how to answer that because they're so very different. The ISPPT is about $445 million and INPERS is $32 billion. So I don't think it's an apples to apples comparison. And the ISPPT also does line of duty injuries, and they do a lot of work with one-on-one with dealing with medical costs for the injured troopers. So I don't quite know how to answer that. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm sure, I mean, as you just said, it's what, 20-fold? I don't have to think about the numbers again. At least 10-fold, 100-fold, whatever. So, but I just want to know, what are the costs of the investment and managing those funds versus, obviously, I mean, just as you exemplify in the college 529 plans, the more dollars you are investing and overseeing, costs, fees have gone down, correct?
Correct.
Right. So I'd like to see a cost, what the costs are specifically. And when you put those funds out, or not the funds, when you're looking for investment managers for that, are all of these funds, including the police, are they put out for an RFP on a regular basis?
All of the ISPPT.
That and the
Do you wanna answer
529s, ABLE, all of those where you're investing those funds, are you putting them out in an RFP on a regular basis?
As far as the state police pension trust managers, our financial consultant does manager searches whenever we either are replacing managers or looking for new different styles of managers. They will do a manager search for us, for the state police pension board, bring those managers to us, and then we'll make a decision to hire them.
So I think we heard, if I'm not mistaken, every 5 years they review. That's how long that's how long the contracts were for their money managers. Of course, they can fire them sooner. They can extend it only one time for 5 years. Is that what you do with this fund?
We are not giving the managers a set time. It's as long as they perform and do what they're supposed to be doing. We analyze those performances, but we wouldn't say at the end of 5 years we're going to replace you. It's an ongoing process, quarter by quarter. If a manager fails to perform maybe to their peers, we will put them on a watch list for several quarters and watch them to see if they improve. It also depends if their management changes, but we very actively review the management of each of our managers and the performance.
So what's been your average rate of return the last 5 years?
I don't know exactly, I don't have that in front of me, what it has been, so.
Okay, thank you.
And I would think, getting back to your one question about the fees, typically managers charge assets under management. So whether, you know, we're managing $450 million, there's no reduction in fees. Who manages that? The manager, whether it be with the state police pension or in PERS, there's still $450 million of assets that would be under management that a manager would charge. So there's no reduction in fees. Who manages those monies? It's the same. Typically, whatever the fee is per asset is what they charge. So
There's no discount for scale?
there can be, yes, if you get to a certain level, yes.
Right.
Yeah, you are
Yeah,
correct
okay,
about
that's-
that.
I was gonna say-
But, yeah, yeah.
Just a quick question. Who manages your little program with ABLE? Who manages it through the resources? Okay, and the dollars that you manage your own dollars, right?
Yes. Understanding that, yes.
Right, and who do you solicit that company to come in, or that money manager, or what?
Do you mean the savings
Yeah.
of the assets under management?
Right.
Right, okay. Yeah, that is done by a census, which is the same company that does our 529 program. They also do our 529A.
Okay, and they on the contract for how long?
Amy, do you know how long? 5 years. So
How long?
we're 1 year in.
And you're
Little-
1 year in,
Yeah, about 1.5 now almost, yeah.
and you did an RFI, or you did a request to bring them in, or what? Did you have people, I mean, did you let this out for, like, anybody that wanted to do it, to manage it?
Sure, I understand. So what we chose to do, what the ABLE Board, ABLE Authority chose to do, was join a consortium of states, and the states went out and did that work and selected a census for the consortium. Now, at the end of 5 years, we have the choice to stand alone or continue the consortium, where we do share some costs across all the states for that. Right now, a census is really one of the very few, I don't know, Amy, there's not very many doing ABLE accounts at all, but a census was kind of in on the front of it, and so they are the provider of choice for all, is it 16 states now? 16 states that are part of this consortium.
Okay, so essentially what you did was went with 16 states together to try to get a better return on your investment.
Yes.
All right,
Yes.
and are they the only company that's able to do that?
They're the only ones that I'm aware of that are out in front wanting to do this, but I'm sure there will be
Okay, all right.
others.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think some states that have standalone programs use different providers as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
I have Joan Blackwell.
Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee. I am Joan Blackwell, and I'm Chief of Staff for the Attorney General's Office. And with me is Clinton Baum, our Director of Finance. To give you a little background about myself, because I don't think many of you know me, I've been in the legal community for a little over 30 years. I started my life as an attorney in private practice. I joined the federal courts as a staff attorney, where I worked with a federal judge for almost 25 years. And then I briefly joined the Attorney General's office when I retired from federal work. I went over and did some finance commercial litigation with a law firm here in town. And then at the end of January 2017, I joined Attorney General Curtis Hill as his chief of staff. So Clint and I both appreciate the time that you're giving us here today to present some updates on our office and also talk about our budget request for the upcoming biennium. First, a little bit about ourselves and our office. We have capacity for about 400 employees. Of those spots, 160 of them are deputy attorney generals, or DAGs, as we call them for short, so lawyers. Most of our staff, we are first and foremost the law firm for the state. We represent the state and we provide advice for the state. And we also have some other functions too, but like I said, 160 of our employees are attorneys. Some of our key responsibilities in our office, and I know they're set out here on the information you had, but I wanted to highlight a few. Our advisory division provides legal advice and opinions to state agencies and elected officials like you, and they also review every single contract and administrative rules for form and substance, so legal compliance. So all contracts that go through every agency in the state goes through our advisory division. Our Consumer Protection Division, that's our largest division in our office. And that group, those attorneys pursue civil actions against individuals or corporations that violate the state's Deceptive Consumer Sales Act. And for example, the lawsuit we filed a few weeks ago on behalf of the state against the opioid manufacturer Purdue Pharma is one of those type cases. And that litigation is housed in our Consumer Protection Division. Another matter that the Consumer Protection Division handles, they handle all the issues surrounding robocalls and the do not call list. And I have to say, this is probably one of the areas or issues that we get the most calls on, we get questions on, we're out in the community, and I'm sure you probably get that from your constituents. I get it from my own family members. You know, I'm on the list, why is that? Why am I getting calls? And you know, my guess is in the mere time that we're here for 30 minutes, if people had their phones on, someone's gonna get a robocall, and it's admittedly frustrating. So the statute right now gives us the ability to go after businesses that call people on the do not call list. But unfortunately, many of the callers, they're scammers. They're not legitimate businesses, they're shell companies, they're fly-by-night. They may not even be here in the borders of the US. So there's very little we can do right now under our statute to go after them. So our teams in our Consumer Protection Division, they have working groups with other Attorney General's offices that are trying to deal with this issue. We all have the same issue. And we're talking to the FCC on this, but we would really like to see some stronger regulation coming from the federal government on this so we can help combat these robocalls. They're really frustrating. And to the extent that's an issue that the legislature wants to take up again, we have a team of attorneys in our office that they know this law, they know this area. So if we can ever provide that information and provide those people to you, we'd be happy to. So whatever we can do on that one. Our litigation division is our second largest division in the office behind the Consumer Protection Division. There are 6 subsections in the litigation division. They are the group that handles representation of the state in any case, state or federal court, that the state is named in. Our appellate division, there's 2 areas in the appellate division. There's the criminal and the civil division. The criminal division represents the state in every appeal that comes from the county prosecutor cases. So the county prosecutors handle the criminal cases, the trial court level, and then our office handles all the appeals, whether it goes up to the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. Our criminal attorneys handle all those appeals. We also have a civil division in our appellate division. They handle any appeals of any civil cases. That can be consumer protection, it can be civil right cases, all the Department of Child Service cases. That's in state and federal court. So any appeal all the way up to the Supreme Court. Our communications and outreach team, they work to just educate the public about what our office does and what we can do for them as citizens. And one of the things we do is a drug take-back, that we hold events around the state where we give Hoosiers the opportunity to come in and dispose of their unused or expired prescription drugs. We've been fortunate to partner with a number of local law enforcement and officials around the state. And just in 2018, we've collected about 1.5 tons of unwanted drugs. So we're really proud of that initiative, and we'll continue to do that. Another one of Attorney General's priorities, and I'm sure same with all of you, reducing youth violence, encouraging youth to pursue meaningful lives. And an entity that is here in Indianapolis, the 10-Point Coalition, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, they use mentorship and peace walks to try to reach the youth in their neighborhoods. And this was such an impressive model, and they had such drastic reduction of crime in those neighborhoods where the 10-Point was active, that we have helped take that model and moved it to the east side of Indianapolis, Gary, and Fort Wayne just a couple weeks ago. And we're in talks with Evansville, Kokomo, and South Bend to try to bring this model to some of the other communities around Indiana. Our unclaimed property division, that group, it's a small but mighty group. They're housed down in a space down in Greenwood, Indiana. They're charged with collecting and safeguarding unclaimed property until we can find the rightful owner. And people automatically think of cash. People forget utility deposits, uncashed checks, stock dividends. Someone in our office actually just received a very large check from, she saw her parents' name listed in that. They had both been deceased, but it was an uncashed stock dividend from quite a while ago. They also recover personal property. Safety deposit boxes that go unclaimed are actually turned over to the unclaimed property division. So they hold a lot of events to educate and actually just remind people to go and check to see if their name is in the unclaimed property list. So I'd encourage all of you, check, see if you are in there or someone you know. Pretty often you know somebody in the list, so it's pretty fun to find that, forgotten or lost money. And our outreach teams, they put a lot of effort in going around the state trying to remind people and educate people. So we do Unclaimed Property Day at the Circle. We have a booth at the State Fair that was highly visited. We have a team that's gone around not just once but twice to all 92 counties in the last year and a half, educating people about unclaimed property. And at the same time, they talk about other things our office does, how to file a consumer complaint, how to avoid scams. We get a lot of questions about credit freezes. With Equifax that hit last year, a lot of people are unsure how to protect their credit. We're starting to get those calls already. There was a press release on Friday morning about a breach with Marriott information that could include more than just names and emails. That could go as far as passport information, credit card information. So not a lot of people know how to freeze their credit, and they also don't know how to unfreeze their credit. So those teams take that time to speak to people and show them how to do those kind of things. I think we've had a pretty outstanding return on our investment, so I guess this is my brag page, so to speak. To go back to unclaimed property, that group processes claims back to property owners at a rate of about $1 million a week. And with some recent marketing efforts and streamlining our claims process, right now they're averaging about $1.2 million in claims are returned every week by our unclaimed property team. So we're really excited about that. Multi-state consumer settlements. We have won approximately $46 million in the last fiscal year in collections, recovery, and consumer restitution under our multi-state consumer settlements. And Clinton, were you going to talk about the ROI? You're a little bit more the nuts and bolts on that.
Howdy again. My name is Clinton Baum. I'm the Director of Finance for the office. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, for our time here today. What's in front of you is just an update from the information disseminated at the last budget cycle, where what we've done is we've taken our general fund expenditures over the time period stated on the slide and found what the annual average is to compare that to what our annual average of revenues received is over that same time period. As you can see, the expenses from a general fund perspective from the office remain very low compared to the revenues coming in, to the point where we are still seeing approximately $11 for every $1 expended from the general fund. I'll turn it back over to Joan for the next slide.
Thank you, Clinton. Office achievement. So this is just a few bullet points of things that we've accomplished in the last year, but we're going to run out of time. I promise I won't go through all of them, but let me just highlight a few and expand on a few. Opioids, the lawsuit that was filed back in November against Purdue Pharma. This is just one tool in the state's arsenal to combat the opioid crisis. And we are committed to holding companies like Purdue Pharma accountable for their deceptive practices. We're in the very early stages of that litigation, but we will certainly keep the legislature updated on the progress of that case. Another program that our office has helped support, and that's just recently, it started this fall, is an expansion of a prescription drug education program for Indiana teens. Our staff looked at CDC data and found that there were 10 counties, and actually they were all rural counties, that had the highest, most risk numbers for teens as far as using or misusing prescription drugs. So we took this educational web-based program and we're offering it to the high schools in those counties, and there's 16 schools that are identified in these 10 rural counties in Indiana. And it is a web-based program that educates students on the use or the misuse of prescription drugs. There is a myth amongst our teens that using or abusing prescription drugs is actually safer than using illegal or street drugs, and that's simply not true. You can overdose just as quickly on a prescription drug as you can an illegal drug. So it is a computer program that is provided at no cost to these schools. Our investment as an office is $20,000 annually, so for 3 years. We've committed $60,000 to bring this educational program to the youth in these 10 rural counties, so we're excited about that. I also wanted to talk about one of our litigation teams a couple months ago won a judgment in favor of the city of Warsaw. It was also, almost $1 million judgment. One of our areas takes the audit reports that are issued by the State Board of Accounts, and we're charged with the civil prosecution of those reports. And in this instance, it involved a former employee of the city of Warsaw, and he was a street superintendent. And he participated in a kickback scheme with a private contractor. And he helped the company win city bids, and he helped them in deliberately overcharging the city for work. The superintendent was convicted, and he's been sentenced to 13 years. But our office, in conjunction with the State Board of Accounts, pursued a judgment against him, which they won a few months ago. And so now they're in the collection efforts on that judgment. So we were really excited about that. Roadmap of what's ahead. I know I might be running out of time, so I'll just highlight a few of the things that I want to bring to your attention. What do we plan to continue to focus on? I've been with the office since late in January 2017, and to me, some of our initiatives today are the same of what my the office's hopes and priorities were in January 2017. We're focusing on our employees. They are our biggest asset, our most valuable asset, and how can we make the environment someplace that is the best place for them to work. We've created an employee engagement team recently, working on employee morale, getting ideas from them on what they would like to see done in the office. We're also continuing to look at salaries. We've rolled out one salary increase recently, and we're continuing to look at that. We look at comparisons with other public agencies. How are we paying compared to those agencies? So we're committed to continuing to do that. We've looked at technology. When in 2017, in January, there were 5 laptops available for 160 lawyers. One of the complaints we heard is with everything paperless with the federal and state courts, that just didn't, they weren't nimble enough. They weren't able to go to depositions and hearings. So now all of our attorneys have laptops, making those kind of improvements. Another thing we've been working on is the case management system. We have a new IDAG program that we started a few months ago that I want to mention. It stands for Intensive Deputy Attorney General Training Program, and we have 11 individuals in that program right now. And that program is for recently sworn-in attorneys. All of these attorneys were sworn in October 2016. And it is a program designed to give them a lot of internal training on trial advocacy skills and other skills that, quite frankly, they just don't get in law school. You don't graduate from law school ready to be a fully trained and operating attorney. So they will rotate throughout the office and have a mentor. So we're really excited about that program. They are valuable to us immediately. And one of the things we also hope is that that will increase retention with these attorneys in their younger years, because that tends to be the age group that we have the biggest drain on. So one last thing I want to mention that's on this slide is a new human trafficking forum that we're putting on next month. Denise Robinson is our Chief Counsel of Investigations, and a lot of people know her from her time over in the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. She handled a lot of high-profile cases there, but in her time in the community, she's found that a lot of the smaller communities, prosecutors and investigators don't have the training or the skills on investigating and identifying human trafficking issues. So it's a critical issue that I know is high on everybody's list. So we're putting on a forum next month to bring people together to give them best practices in that area. So Clinton, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Joan. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I wanted to start with our request today to talk about a comparison of the general fund that was appropriated to this office for fiscal years 18 and 19, compare that to where our request is going to end up with our main operating fund, where the lion's share of our general fund gets appropriated. As this slide will show, we received $21.6 million of general fund into our main operating fund each of those years in 18 and 19. And at the end of the day, our request contains $22.8 million between the base and the 3 change packages funded by general fund that we're requesting in our conversation with you today. And now I'd like to break down those requests and start with the requests that we've put in the category of current operations. These are change packages that we are requesting on top of our base budget through the budget instructions that will allow us to continue operating in things that are already a part of our office. The first we are calling current state because this is $1.5 million of general fund we're requesting to our main operating fund that will bring us up to current appropriation levels. This way we can continue the items that Joan discussed with employee engagement, continuing the salary equalization that was approved in the last budget cycle that we have been implementing over this 2-year period. The next is to find funding for the IDAG program. One of the benefits we had is this program for the first 3 months, these attorneys were funded as law clerks because they had not passed the bar yet. And now that they have passed the bar, they are currently in our category for starting level Deputy Attorney General salaries. We're using vacant positions and the dollar associated with those to fund this particular program and to fund 15 full positions instead of the 11 we currently have for a full year at those the proper rates. We're requesting $1.14 million from the general fund to be added to the main operating fund so that we can continue this program and be able to use those vacant positions to fill other staffing needs within the agency. The last part of our current operations is going to be our request of $570,000 from the agency settlement fund to be added to the main operating fund each year for our opioid litigation team. As Joan referenced, we have a litigation filing against Purdue Pharma due to their practices, and we had worked with the governor's office and the state budget agency on this case as it had been moving forward, and we've been collecting information. Once we got to the point where we were ready to file this complaint, we discussed with that office and with this budget agency the need for a department, a staff that would then take over this filing and any subsequent filings that could come from this process. We received over $400,000 of augmentation from the agency settlement fund already this year, so we could bring this staff on board now and take over this proceeding. And this request is to incorporate that into our ongoing budget so that we can keep this staff on board to continue with this case and the others that will come through it. The rest of our change packages we've categorized as planning change packages. We're planning for the future and the things that we know are about to come. The first of those was the 3.3% increase based on the personnel calculations per budget instructions, in which we know and understand that healthcare costs and other personnel costs are going to increase over time. And this gives us the ability to absorb those costs within our operating budget as those things happen over the next 2 years. We have listed here the $640,000 of general fund increase that would go into our main operating fund. There is a change package for about $43,000 of dedicated funding in the unclaimed property fund that is from this same calculation. Next, we have Medicaid fraud state match. We're asking for $500,000 of general fund to be added to our state match line so that we can bring that commitment up to the $1.9 million that is our state match requirement based on last year and this current federal fiscal year grant for the Medicaid fraud control unit. Last budget cycle, the office asked for $600,000 to be added to the $1.1 million appropriation. There was approval given for about half that, and $300,000 was added to that line item, and that currently sits at the $1.4 million. To make up the difference between the 1.4 and the 1.9 that is necessary for the 75-25% match within the grant, we've been using some of our recovery from Medicaid. Now, when Joan talked about those recoveries earlier, she gave you whole dollars. 2/3 of that amount goes back to FSSA so they can give back to the feds, and the last third is left to be split between us and FSSA, and we take a very small portion of that to help to fund that difference between what we were appropriated and what the need is so we can make sure we match all the federal dollars to operate that division. The request here to add this is because those revenues are very volatile, and they can vary greatly in the amount that we receive on a year-by-year basis. So in doing our due diligence, we wanted to request this from the general fund as a much more steady and stable stream of revenue to be able to match that grant so we can continue the operations of Medicaid fraud. The last piece here is $1.16 million from the agency settlement fund to create a new department that will handle tort litigation for the office for those things that come through. This is an effort to reduce cost for expenses incurred to pay outside counsel to handle those requests. So to summarize, from the base budget, we're asking $5.5 million worth of change packages from general funds and from dedicated funding. But when we look at what was part of the appropriations in 2018 and 2019, we're requesting $4 million total of increase between general and dedicated funds. And then the last slide I have here for you is to break down just our general fund requests. In the 18 and 19 appropriated funds for the operating fund, we received $21.6 million, and state match was $1.4 million, for a total of $23 million of general funds to operate the office for the staff that Joan had mentioned earlier. For 20 and 21, we're requesting $22.8 million of general fund for the main operating fund, $1.9 million for state match, for a total of $24.7 per year, which is an increase of $1.7 million each year of the biennium, or $3.4 million total for the biennial budget request of increased general fund. Joan?
Can I answer any questions, Clinton and I, on anything we presented?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. All right, real quickly, and you might not have this now, but you can get it back to me. With respect to the outstanding return on state investment slide, and you talk about multi-state consumer settlements, $46 million. Do you, 2 years ago, I recall on appropriations, and you were new, so you didn't have those numbers. Do you keep track costs with respect to each sort of litigation topic and what it costs for you to run those cases?
So we do track our expenses, and what we can do is we can work with the invoices that we've received for those particular ones to try to get to you those particular pieces. When we're monitoring our expenses, we're looking at our costs for litigations as a whole, either whether it's through consumer protection or through government litigation. But through further research, we can break down for the particular case what costs were incurred and try to get some of those figures for you. But as you referenced earlier, it will take some time to get there, but more than willing to work on getting those pieces for you.
Yeah, I'd like to see one, maybe just give me one as an example, because I had gotten the impression 2 years ago that you were going to start tracking that to make sure, obviously some of these are very high profile, but also very expensive to run, and you know, you have to do a cost benefit of what you expect your recovery to be. All right, with respect to your changes to current and planning change packages, so the opioid litigation team is a whole new thing, so you're looking for money to maintain, so you didn't budget that yet, so is that monies that you're finding from elsewhere to fund this? I presume that's the Purdue Pharma claim?
So as I expressed earlier, we had worked with the budget agency to get an augmentation from the agency settlement fund this year so that we could cover the costs of those new staff as we were able to bring this case together. And since it was a new part in 2019 and not a part of the 2018 expenditures, it wasn't included in our base budget, which is why we brought it to you as a change package to add into our budget instead of trying to incorporate it back into the base.
Okay, so presumably, but that's a one-time case, right? And so this isn't expensive. So do you budget out how long you think that case will go and what you anticipate your recovery to be?
And so that's where we're reviewing not just this case, but any subsequent litigation that could come out of this case. But we are looking at what's the time period, how long are we going to be in this? This is not going to be a short-term 6-9 month issue. This is going to be a multi-year issue working with this case and what comes out of it. And then we will be looking at that team in the future to make sure that we are using it effectively.
Yeah, I'd like to see just what you're using as metrics, particularly because you also have a torts litigation team, which is new. So you're also concerned about the Medicaid fraud match, but you recovered, I don't know, 40-some million as I see, and so you said you get a very small piece of that. What have you received to date from that on an annual basis, if you average it out or whatever?
And I can get you the figures on a year-by-year basis, and I can show you some of the trend lines so you can see where we're going with that. Some years we've received, as we discussed, the 40, the 30. Other years we've
40
received...
to 30 part of what, million?
So million, when we're talking about in previous slides, we're only talking about the last fiscal year and what we provide in the presentation. But in other years, we've received other dollar amounts, and I can chart those out for you and show you what we've received in those years, what the trend line shows where we're headed, and see where those go. Because again, we're talking about those in the total computable amount, and 2/3 of that, when we receive those monies, is going to go back to FSSA so they can pay the feds back.
Right.
Because that was their cost of it. Within that other third, a majority of that is going to go back to FSSA because they're the ones that incurred the cost.
Right.
They covered that expense on the front end.
Okay, but if you don't access that fund and we line item it, what are you gonna use those dollars for that you get from the Medicaid Recovery Fund?
Well, part of those recovery dollars are currently supporting our appropriation. There is a line item in the main operating fund of about $600,000 that is to go into the main operating fund as a dedicated source of revenue to cover that. So that's where when those revenues come in, we're using those, one, because it was specified within the budget bill to fund the main operating fund, and then to cover those increased costs because of the state match disparity, because we don't have enough of those general funds. We're not receiving much of those dollars, so that does disappear quickly when you add the $600,000 plus the $500,000 to get from the 1.4 to the 1.9 that our current match rate is.
So do you think that additional $500,000 you'll need in addition to or instead of?
What we're doing is we're trying to make it as an instead of to try and solidify our revenue stream.
So
Like I
if we
said,
did it instead of then, although the cost should be what it costs to recover it, so that should go down if there's less, but forget that part. If it's an instead of then, would you forgo access to those dollars?
The issue is that our costs continue to go up, and that's where we've seen our grant budget increase, both because we've had staff increases, you have the increases to healthcare, you have the increases to lease space, and then you have the increase in just other operating costs as we see across the board, which is why we would still need those revenues, because even when we get to the 1.9, our budget continues to go up for that unit, and so we're going to need access to those to make up that difference.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one quick question. Under your office achievements on your slide number 9, it talks about office achievements, but one thing, what about this, the lawsuit against Obamacare or the ACA? It's not listed, and where are we with that?
Well, I can get you a more detailed update.
It doesn't have to be long. We're still pursuing that?
We are still pursuing it.
Okay, so
Are you talking about the one that came out of the U.S. District
Texas,
Court a
the one
little
with
while ago?
Texas.
Correct. Okay, that dealt with the tax.
yeah, which can be
okay.
very detrimental to our HIP 2.0. So I just want to let you know, I'd like to follow up on that later. I just want to
Okay.
put it back on the race. It's not on here. You know, I want to make sure that we look at transparency and the full disclosure, and you want more money, we need to have everything out here. That's all. No, just
I could ask a lot more to add a lot more to. It was just trying to highlight a few things, but absolutely. it
yeah,
is,
but that's important because we can lose money with that lawsuit. Okay, we can lose money with that lawsuit.
Do you want us to get you an update on that directly?
Mr. Chairman, is it possible if we can request an update?
Oh,
Thank you
certainly.
very much.
Yeah, I can get that for you. Thank you. Certainly. Yeah. You all get it, certainly. No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
And we'll have the Commissioner, Adam Krupp. And just, so you know, this isn't really a budget review for them. It's a review of the new IT system, I believe, is what we're going to discuss. Yeah, the modernization we've done of the.
Okay, just making sure everybody had a copy. All right. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for this opportunity. Members of the committee, it's nice to see everybody again. My name's Adam Krupp, Commissioner of Indiana's Department of Revenue. With me to my right is Ed Vance, our Chief Financial Officer. He's going to join me in this presentation. And I'm also joined by Kevin Gully, who is our Chief Modernization Officer, in the event certain questions arise that get us down into the weeds about the technical components. So really, before we begin in terms of that second slide, so if we're just talking about the cover slide, I know last time the department was before you talking about this project generally up in South Bend. It was more of a, here's where we are in the procurement, we're negotiating the contract. I am excited and pleased to sit before you today to talk about the fact that this project is actually underway, where we have boots on the ground doing work every day to get us toward the first rollout of this four-phase, four-year project. A couple of things just quickly before we talk about the timeline, and then Ed Vance will get into the dollars. Fast Enterprise was selected, as you know. They are the leading provider of this modernization solution in the revenue space throughout the country. But since Fast Enterprises was selected and has come on site, which is where we were sort of last time we came before you, we've also added the IV&V, Independent Verification Validation component. We have Grant Thornton right alongside us and Fast as part of this project. We have also implemented and instituted an executive steering committee, which includes executives at the Department of Revenue, also Fast Enterprises, but also has Dewan Neely, the director of the Indiana Office of Technology, right there with us every step of the way to make sure the technologies are in sync with what the state's priorities are. Every week, the executives at the department are in tune with this project through a weekly status report, and we've also brought in organization change management as a priority for the project so that our staff is fully trained and we don't treat this as just a fancy new technology product that the agency is not then utilizing to the best of their ability to deliver best-in-class customer service. From an overall project standpoint, I am pleased and proud to say that as of today, we are checking all the boxes, everything that folks in your position would want to know to ensure that the agency is doing its best and staying on track, on schedule, and importantly, on budget. So next, if we go to that second slide, which will be the second page in your handout, this is the proposed project approach, 4 major rollouts over 4 years. The startup installation is underway. We are in the midst of rollout 1, which is a modernized environment, corporate filings, business filings, whereas before it was largely paper, now being electronic, digital, modern, and we'll talk specifically on the next slide about some of those features. Where you see rollout 1, sort of that blue line goes into 2019. Specifically, we're talking Labor Day 2019. Labor Day is a key date for the modernization of the Department of Revenue because Labor Day will be a common theme, 2019, 2020, and then 2021. Those are rollouts 1, 2, and 3. The fourth rollout, sort of a little earlier, we'll actually be able to do this in less than 4 years. The summer of 2022 is when that fourth and final rollout's going to occur. On this slide, you also see the types of taxes. These are general that are going to be comprised of each particular rollout. There's over 65 different actual tax types, so we are overgeneralizing here when you see that rollout 1 is corporate. We're actually going to include things like aircraft taxes, just to sort of throw those in. But corporate is sort of the trigger, that's the benchmark of rollout 1, whereas rollout 2 is sales tax, withholding tax. Rollout 3 is sort of the big one. This is the individual income tax. Working with the vendor, looking at best practices around the country, most would agree. You save individual income tax till later in the project so that you really know what you have in a system before you try to tackle that beast. And then rollout 4 is everything that's left, largely special taxes, things like cigarette tax, fireworks, all the little categories of taxes that the department administers for the state. Okay, and then we'll go to the next slide before I turn it over to Ed and we talk about the dollars. This is a highlight slide for us, something we've sort of, I guess, hot off the presses, if you will. Now, the handout that you just received actually has one slight modification. In the middle there, you see a TBD on the screen. That TBD is now filled in with Gentax in gold as a new feature. So that's one modification. But the real takeaway from this, and this sort of picture shows you rollout one. What does the department have today that Hoosiers get to do and utilize to interact with us? And what will they have at their fingertips Labor Day 2019 when this project goes live with rollout one? Everything that is in gold is a new feature. Now, if you look at that, some of you are going to say, really? I can't believe that's a new feature. That's the unfortunate reality of our legacy system that's been around for over 2 decades. Some things that should be expected that you would naturally expect to occur every day are not there, but they will be there with rollout one. So if you look at the right, for example, view correspondence, send secure messages to and from the department, update your name and address. All the things we typically do in 2018 through a digital portal, right? E-services functionality, whatever bank you use, you can probably log on and go through a portal and update this type of information. You might even be able to see your history, your prior transactions. You can't do that today at the department. You'll be able to do those things with rollout one on the corporate side. So wherever you see the word Gentax, that is the platform that Fast Enterprises is delivering to us. We will rebrand it. We'll also brand a portal to be rolled out in conjunction with rollout one. So those are all the features. Many of them have been long-standing issues for the department, things that we have not been able to offer Hoosiers. Labor Day next year, we will begin to start offering some of these services that should be expected by now. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ed Vance, again, our Chief Financial Officer, to talk through the numbers, and then we'll be happy to address any questions you have.
Good afternoon. As the Commissioner mentioned, we have a project implementation that consists of 4 rollouts and over 4 years, and total budget for that is $91.9 million. Also, our FAST contract is $77.7 million, and what's important to note about that is that the implementation portion of our FAST contract is $60.2 million, which is included in the $91.9 million total that you see there. So our software and implementation services provided by FAST comprises about 65% of our project cost for implementation. To date, we've been appropriated $33 million, and we are asking for an additional $41.7 million to complete the implementation of rollout 2 and 3, which is sales and withholding and individual taxes, respectively. So what I'd like to do is just maybe go into a breakout of those numbers and give you a little bit more detail behind that. Next slide. So this shows the current biennium and the coming biennium, and we have a total of $74.7 million in our budget for these 2 bienniums. As you can see there at the bottom, the $74.7 million is about $17.2 million under the previous slide, and that is because rollout 4 is not included here, and if we add that in, then we'll tie back to the previous slide. So if we look at fiscal 2018, we have spent $2.8 million on this project to date, and we have an appropriation as of 2018 of about $16.1 million. And so we have underspent that solely due to the timing of the start of this project and the contract signing. So the bulk of the work, the arrival of the FAST employees started in fiscal 19. So we don't have a savings there, we just simply have a shifting of dollars into fiscal 19. So when you look at that first line, contract implementation services, you can see a total of 48.6. That represents, again, 65% of our total implementation services, and that, of course, is the FAST contract. If you look at fiscal 19, you can see that we're anticipating to spend $20.3 million to pay for services for FAST. To date, we have spent actually $9.2 million. $7 million of that is for the initial installation of the software and licensing. Then we have another $250,000 that was for first-year maintenance. And then we have another $1,950,000 that was spent on the definitions phase for this initial rollout, which is for corporate taxes. So we're through that part of the process, and so far the project is on budget and on time, and slightly ahead of time, I might add. That second line is internal resources, $19.3 million of the total implementation costs. That is about 26% of the total. Internal resources represents all the key resources outside of the FAST contract itself. So that would include door personnel dedicated to this project. We have 12 individuals that are from across our organization that are subject matter experts that are full-time dedicated to this project, and they've been largely with the project since the inception of it. It also includes backfill support, so as other needs are identified by the core project and there is a need to move door employees onto the project, we then backfill them with contractors. So we've got dollars in there for that. We also have dollars in for internal audit support, and we just want to have a very sound framework of internal controls around this new system as it gets started. And also, this is not only a modernization of technology, but it's a modernization of business processes. So we also want internal audit support to help ensure that we have good internal controls around new business processes that are driven by the adaptation of our business processes to the new system requirements. And then lastly, we have contingency in that money, in that line as well. And we're just obviously simply trying to reserve monies for any unknowns there. So we want to be very practical in managing our budget. So if you look at that $19.3 million for internal resources, $13 million of that is actually comprised of contingency and door employees, or about 2/3 of that particular line item budget. The third line there is IT infrastructure and support. That is $3.9 million total over this biennium period represented here. 5%, that represents 5% of the total cost. This is simply costs that we anticipate incurring from IoT interagency support. Next, we have independent verification and validation. That is $1.2 million of the total, or about 2%. And we have a contract, as Commissioner mentioned, with Grant Thornton to provide IV&V services for the project. And then lastly, we have hardware and software cost, about $1.7 million of the total, or about 2%. And that is just the cost for new database servers to run the new ITS, or integrated tax system, on, as well as associated licenses that are needed. And that is our budget. I'll turn it back over to the Commissioner.
Thanks, Ed. So this last slide here, this just gives you at a very high level, you know, what are we getting for this money, right? What is this system going to do for the citizens of Indiana that your current legacy system is not doing? And the list is extremely long, but these are some of the key takeaways. Some of you are very familiar with these. We have not been able to provide a customer portal that allows historical information, payment information, what previous returns contained. The portal will be able to do that. All, you know, electronic filing of tax returns that currently are submitted via paper. That's just a true, by definition, the modernization of our agency and what we're doing. Ability to file amended returns. Right now, we do that via paper. On average, takes 6 months. Through this, it'll take, you know, a matter of weeks. That's a game changer for the Department of Revenue. It's a game changer in the world of customer service. And then lastly, which something not to be overlooked, very important, validation, transparency of revenue disbursements and reporting to local units of government. So when we have an e-services portal and we have a new modernized environment that allows reports and queries to be run like never before, on demand, and even without asking for it, we can prepare transparent reports for local units and what their disbursement should look like and what they actually received and where that revenue is coming from, versus today when they reach out to us either via email or place a phone call to somebody and say, hey, can you prepare that report for me? We'll do that automatically through the system and have it available. So that's all the information we have for you today. Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity. If there are questions, we're happy to answer any.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your work on this going forward. It's an exciting project, but I just have a quick question. Is the contract implementation services, will that drop off once it's implemented? Once we've paid all of the money to get this up and running?
Yes, so what we'll do with a project like this, yes, the implementation will drop off, and then we will reach a point of support and maintenance.
And then the internal resources for the next biennium, is that personnel as well, and will that stay the same? Obviously, that's a significant jump. It's going to stay about that number?
That's correct. The core team is about 12 or so DOR associates, and so that will essentially stay the same with the exception of backfills that are added to that team for the next rollout of the tax types in those phases.
So 12 new people at about a $2.5 million increase? It's got to be more than that, right? Internal resources from today, 2018 to 2021 is 2.4 million increase, right? Roughly. So about $2.5 million per year, an additional 12 people for support for this new system. Is that what you're telling me?
Correct.
And so that $2.5 million is for the 12 people? Or is there more in that?
Yeah, it's about 1.5 to 1.8 for the full-time people dedicated to this project.
And then what's the additional increase then?
The additional would be for the backfill. Yeah, we've got individuals in there that will backfill as well.
So I'll jump in with that. With a project like this, we require, and the vendor will support that as well, to do this right, we need to take people off of their full-time day jobs and assign them to the project so that they're focusing on just the implementation of the new environment 24/7 leading up to that rollout. So right now with phase one or rollout one being corporate, we need to take our key corporate supervisors, subject matter experts, team leads, dedicate them to the modernization of the corporate tax world, which means somebody else has to fill their place on the other end for the department. So we'll be identifying people to either take their role or bring in new people to backfill their spot. So they can't handle both at the same time because we've got to keep at a very high level, the thing that gets lost sometimes with this 4-phase rollout is it's not taking out the old system and putting a new one in. It's operating both systems in a live production environment at the same time running in parallel. So when you have dedicated experts on the modernization side, if you will, you still have to have a team of people on the legacy side working together at the same time. And an individual cannot do both.
But that won't ever be reduced? We're not going to have any savings in personnel down the line?
It will, yeah, it will trickle off and it will be reduced. We will not be saying sort of, once the project is implemented, there is no more backfill, so we won't be saying, you know, personnel is going to keep doing this. If it's done right, personnel should actually be dropping a little bit because we get more efficient. People might be assigned to other opportunities within the agency if that old job no longer exists, for example. But yeah, we won't need to backfill, so that number will drop. Yes, Senator. Thank you.
Whenever you are ready.
funding comes from. The blue is general fund. When you take out sort of the pass-through on prosecutor and judges' salaries, about half of the funding for the Supreme Court comes from general fund dollars. The other half comes through fees, attorney registration, grants, and others. So that's how the court is funded. And last year, because we moved all our administrative offices, we had a savings. We saved about $6 million over 10 years. We didn't have to pay any rent last year for the bulk of it. So we were, for the first time, able to revert all of those savings back. So we, instead of spending ahead, getting new positions, we reverted the whole $1.8 million. So that is how the court is funded. We have a single new request this year. Some of you have been here before. There was a number of requests that the court had. We have one. I guess I'm taking a quote from Jason Dudich about holding the line. Jason, did I say that right? Holding the line on that. We have one. It's civil legal aid. That is in addition to just the budget increase for cost of living adjustments that all the other branches get. So our one new request for this year is a fund that's already been funded, and it's civil legal aid. And what is that? What's become really apparent to us is sort of the justice gap in the civil side. If you're involved with a criminal case, you have a right to an attorney. Civilly, we're seeing more and more nationally, and it really plays out in Indiana, 80% of low-income people go to court within a year, whether it's evictions, an employment matter, or a civil dispute. For the opioid crisis, we're seeing people go through the criminal justice system, get out on the other side, hopefully that's the goal of it, the rehabilitation, and have things like expungement, debts, evictions, child support, so it gets them back in the system. So we're worried about the justice gap. People of limited means, and the types of things that come before them are housing, employment. It's the type of thing where you miss your job because you maybe have a failure to appear and you get arrested. It could be you're a veteran that comes back from war and you can't access the benefits. You don't have a right to counsel on that. So those are, we're asking for a small increase. Civil legal aid was funded in 1997 with $1 million. It was increased to 1.5 in 2007. In Indiana, for every 2 civil legal aid cases that can be taken, 1 are turned away. We are not just asking for government funding on this. We have mandatory reporting. We require our attorneys to have an aspirational goal and report their pro bono. We're working with the law schools, and last year we had, I believe, I can't remember, I think it was over 100,000 hours, or it might be more than that, of hours given on a volunteer basis. So really it's providing legal assistance to family in crisis, domestic, elderly, veterans, health emergencies, foreclosures, and really if a national disaster happens. So what do you get for that? So I asked Legal Services to do an economic impact study, and what they found, and I have a copy of the study and I can make available to all of you, for every $1 invested in civil legal aid, close to $7 in immediate and long-term financial benefits. So we're looking at that. The other thing that we're doing is we put together a coalition for court access. So we took every group that deals with the civil legal aid needs, and it's sort of 3 parts to it. One is civil legal services, the other is getting volunteer lawyer hours, and the third is kiosk and self-help forms. What can we do to make the justice system more available so we're not asking for funding for the other two. It's just to have civil legal aid funding that could help pay to train attorneys, others. So that is our ask. So the reason that we're asking for civil aid is really looking at and telling you that we will get a return of investment on this with regard to a healthy workforce, getting child support, getting benefits. And we want to talk to you a little about the return on investment on the funding that we're receiving now. You were very helpful to the court with regard to its restructuring and getting court technology going. So we had 1.3 million cases filed in Indiana last year. So if you think about it, we have, what, 6.6 million people, takes two sides in every case. We have a couple million people involved with our court system each year. So technology has been just very efficient. I want to talk to you quickly about electronic filing, our case management system, public safety apps that are in the Insight program. You asked us to do the technology for the public defender information system. We said, fine. You asked us, would you do the child abuse registry so we could have access, people that have got convictions for child abuse so they can't get in positions where they're working with children. We said, fine, and we have that up and going in the last 2 years. So what we're doing with electronic filing, we have 24/7 access to the courts. I actually can see when people file documents on weekends, on night. Instead of missing work to go and file, you can just file from your computer. So we have 31,000 registered users now. We just started this in 2015, and we have 85 counties. By the end of this year will be electronic filing, and we'll have this project near completion. So this is our case management system in 2016. When I talked to you about having courts be able to talk to each other, to be able to get aggregate data so we can make, so we can get the information to you and make decisions, so a judge in one county knows if there's a writ for the arrest of somebody in another county. This is what it looked like in 2016. This is what it will look like by the end of this year, and then in green we've got the counties that are in the pipeline. So 85% of all new cases will be filed in that system. I know some of you got tired over the years hearing about courts. Did any of you get tired over the years hearing about courts and technology? No? Okay. Well, we're moving. Those maps show that we are moving towards completion. And we have, in looking at the counties that are signed up, again, this wasn't required of them. They're just seeing that it's the way to do business to give access to the court. We also do applications for public safety. The Protection Order Registry, I've got a few of them listed there. A lot of these ones you asked us to do, or we're able to access federal dollars. Some applications, it's required the mental health report to the FBI. Those are necessary for us to get different federal highway dollars. NPLEX is very interesting. You asked us to do that, and what we did is, if somebody's got a drug conviction, we upload those drug convictions daily, and then when somebody who's got a drug conviction goes to a drugstore to get Sudafed or a drug precursor, it blocks the sales. We have 52,000 users on the block list, so we are blocking sales of methamphetamine precursors daily. We've had about 2,500 of the people who are on the list try to make a purchase of the methamphetamine precursors, so it has been blocked now. Sales have been blocked about 4,000 times. The Child Abuse Registry, we just started that July 1, and we have about almost 13,000 individuals logged into that registry. Again, that's a safety issue. The Adult Guardianship Registry, we're the first in the nation to have that. We have 63 counties with 41 million in assets that are being managed. We have close to 900,000 protection orders in the Protective Order Registry. And we have about 250,000 people that paid a traffic ticket online. Instead of going down to the courthouse and waiting, we do that. So a new Insight application we have. Last year, the legislature, 2 years ago, the legislature joined with the court on sort of looking at jail overcrowding and pretrial release, and just depending on money bail. So we're implementing a risk assessment along with other factors to get information to our judges. So if somebody has $500, they don't stay in jail, and this person that has $500 can get out. So we are implementing the supervised release system to have information available to judges, probation officers, community corrections, problem-solving courts, to be able to make safe, smart decisions with regard to monitoring an offender safely in the community. There's sort of a survey done last year, just a one day, and I'm sure a lot of you legislators hear from your sheriffs about the conditions, the overcrowding of the jails. So we're about 90, most of the jails on that day were 99% at capacity. Some of them were 250% at capacity. So in looking at ways to safely keep low-risk, nonviolent offenders in the community, that's why we developed and are working with a supervised release system. So the data sharing with all the technology, here are all the branches of government that we are sharing our data with, and if somebody else needs it, I know LSA contacts us a lot and need it, we make it available. I mean, we want to be good partners with the other branches of government, and if you ever hear that we're not sharing our data, please let us know. So we share it with the Department of Corrections, Department of Education, State Department of Health. Public defenders needed technology. I know a lot of people sit here and ask you for money for technology, so we thought we could develop through our core technology, the Public Defender Information System. We're doing that now. You asked us, I think it was statutory, it was a statutory requirement, so we are off and rolling on that. We have it fully deployed at this point in 24 counties. I think we just started that after the last session. You can now access all court cases online. We've had 6.2 million users visit my case about 20 million times just this year. So you think about it, whether you've got a case that you want to find out when your court date is, you're an attorney, you want to find out what the cases are about, you have that. Unlike some requirements in other states, it's free, it's available. You just go to mycase.in.gov. We have more than 60 visits per day on laptops and phones. It's sort of just a new way of doing business with the courts, that you're able to have 24/7 access through your desktop or through your phone. So the main court access programs that you funded in the last session were problem-solving courts. We have not asked for any funding on commercial courts and the complex court motion pilot project. We are funding those right now through efficiencies we've managed through reorganization. The Galcasa program, and then the adult guardianship. I'm going to talk briefly about those. The problem-solving courts, the opioid issue has really hit. The nature of the addictions and the treatment and the supervision needed to safely maintain really a huge number of people that are in the court systems because of the addictions epidemic, which is not just opioids. We're seeing more meth now. We're seeing a resurgence of a number of drugs. So when we have problem-solving courts and we look at these efficiencies, we're building it for whatever the next drug is. So this is how fast we're growing those, given the urgency of the need. We had 81 courts in 2016. We'll have, I think we're going to be probably close to about 120 courts by the end of 2019. The same with veterans courts. Indiana has one of the highest per capita number of veterans in the country, given the size of our state. We went from 19 courts in 19 counties to 28 courts in 27 counties. We really want to make a veterans court available to any qualified veteran throughout the state. So we're trying to get one in each judicial district. And our judges have been really good about using those courts across county lines. You might live in one county that doesn't have a veteran court, but they're partnering with a judge. And we think that's really very important. Family recovery courts, you're going to be hearing a lot about Department of Child Services and issues and the number and the explosion over time. A model that works nationally that we're really ramping up in Indiana are family recovery courts, and that would be in the Chins case, where when can you safely keep a child with the parents while they're going through recovery? It takes a lot of judicial and community partner oversight. So we have made a push, so we're working with DCS on greatly expanding our family recovery courts. I will tell you, SAMHSA gave out 2 grants for family recovery courts. Gave out 13 nationally. Indiana got 2 of them. They got 2 grants of $2.1 million. One was in Clark County and one was in Marion County. So we really are seeking other funding on that, but you know the cost. We're getting close to $1 billion what we're spending with abused and neglected children through the Department of Child Services. We're looking at innovative ways. And so in looking at, again, return on investment, keeping children safely with the parents when able, and these courts are a model. Justice Goff had a successful one in Wabash County. He has sort of led this initiative for the court. Commercial courts, we're in our third year of that. We've had 356 cases filed. These are business versus business case, complex commercial litigation. We met with general counsel for businesses around the state. We asked them, what are you seeing with your court system? They said it costs too much, it takes too long. So we have 6 different commercial courts that are available to take cases anywhere around the country. So we're looking at that data. How fast can they get to motion to dismiss, and what is it doing? And we're having it's been very well received. So we're continuing to grow that. And again, we're funding the commercial courts. We're paying for law clerks out of efficiencies we have and cost savings in other areas. Children served by CASA. The funding that the legislature gave us, this is the increase we've had on the number of children that have that voice in court. We think it's important. There's still children without, but training up and getting volunteers is a constant, it's constant work. We're very committed to the work that we do in the Gal CASA program. Our aged population, protecting their assets. We actually had the judges getting calls from banks with regard to drug-seeking family members going and sort of purging out and cleaning out bank accounts for our elders. So we did a guardianship registry, so it's online. You can look at it. There's a guardianship for this person. You might be a medical provider, a counselor, anyone. You have that information. And there's, again, 41 million assets that we're protecting in the registry. And that's how fast we've rolled that out. We had 11 counties do it in 2014. We have 64 counties now, and our goal is to roll it out to the rest of the state. We have volunteers for adult incapacitated. I mean, it's sad that sometimes people don't have a family member. We're seeing that more and more. So we're having volunteers work with our aged population that finds themselves in just critical needs. So we're growing that. We now have 18 programs. We just started it in 2014. We're serving 42 counties, and we've had a 200% increase in volunteers. Again, what we're doing with a lot of our programs, whether it's getting a vet to walk with a vet and be a vet mentor, or a volunteer guardian, or a CASA, really looking at capitalizing volunteers within the community to help serve those in need. So a lot of our programs have that element to it. And just some other court initiatives this year. We had an opioid summit where we invited judges to bring teams from every county. Every county came. We had about 1,000 people to learn better ways, evidence-based treatment with regard to dealing with opioid use disorder. We're working hard on pretrial release. We're sending text messages now to a defendant. You'd be probably surprised to hear over 50,000 warrants for failure to appear were issued by Indiana courts. What does that mean? Somebody gets arrested and goes to our overcrowded jails. So we're sending them 5 days before and 1 day before on criminal defendants. And I think within like a couple weeks, we'd sent 59,000 messages. Just a new way of doing business with the court, and the funding that you've helped us with technology has gotten that done. And we've got a couple other things here that we're working on. We had the 20th anniversary for our Conference for Legal Education Opportunity, which is to really work at, recruit, and support underrepresented students in the legal field. We want to have judges of color. We want to have diversity on the bench, and we start with lawyers. So we are really looking at the scholarships we give for CLEO, the iCLEO program. We have graduated over 500 through it, and we've got an application system out now that has been successful. So the final of the Indiana Supreme Court operates on less than 1% of the budget. We want to be good. We want to be good partners. I'm very proud to serve as your Chief Justice, and we're open to suggestions and collaborations and working together. Any questions?
Thank you very much. I've had a little bit of use of the My Case. I think it's a great system, but I do have one question, and this is pretty small, but might become more of an issue with our high rate of removal in DCS. The expungement of a DCS issue. My concern is some parents are being found to have issues. Children may or may not be removed. They come under the umbrella and they go through the processes. But it's not a trial. So there's no end game and end time where if it was a criminal proceeding, they can get it expunged, right? And there is this expungement process under, I guess you file it as a JM, right? You can't file that online currently. But I also have to say, having worked with a particular person, it's a lot harder, and they're not getting that kind of information out. And these are life-changing.
They're not getting the information out that they can get that
Yes.
substantiation expunged?
Yes, I know that's not your responsibility, but my concern is there are so many more people in the system, and that's like having a felony on your record with never having been
Might-
adjudicated a felon.
It could affect your licensing, it could affect your job.
Affect
Yeah,
a lot,
it's-
yes.
yeah, it's, we have the Children's Commission that's set up with regard to the 3 branches of government looking at that. I mean, that would be a good issue to vet through them. There's a lot of steps to go through, and that's sort of the access. I mean, that's, who's gonna help that family get that record clean? And that goes to civil legal aid or get a volunteer lawyer, because a lot of times you can't, people of limited means, you wanna make sure the courthouse is open to them. So
Right.
as a judge, I saw that, and as a practitioner, I saw that. People that would lose, you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you're a
Yep.
school teacher.
That's exactly the
So
case.
it can have the collateral consequences of the justice system not getting it right, whether it's at anywhere along the way, is a problem we're seeing more and more. More and more records are available to look at. The more and more information is out there that we need to make sure is corrected information, and we want to protect so that one decision you made then isn't going to cause you a lifetime of consequences, because we want a healthy economy and a healthy workforce. So I can work with you on that. We can look at that with regard to the Children's Commission and look at that. Is there something we can tweak on the legislation? Is there an education we can do? Can we advise at a detention hearing better that you know you have this right? You don't to get this off your record. We're looking at like online dispute resolution for those small little cases that maybe you don't need to come to court. So maybe we need to find a better way. And when I went through all those applications with regard to, we saw this need, once you've got the infrastructure down, it's easier to get it done. Like, it's just like the Child Abuse Registry or the Protective Order Registry, or trying to stop sales of meth precursors. We'll work with you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to comment just real quick that I've been working with the Chief Justice on this issue, but I would be remiss if I didn't say, if we don't act proactively on this issue, we're going to be behind the 8 ball again. The Supreme Court of the state of Indiana lost a very important justice, and although that justice was replaced by someone who, quite frankly, I admire, his old softball team, and Justice Slaughter, our Supreme Court is now void of any minority representation. And it would be remiss if I didn't specifically say that we, as the state of Indiana, and all Hoosiers should be represented with diversity on the Supreme Court. We've got a great Chief Justice. We've had a great history of this court. And I'm just going to, say here, I don't know if anybody's ready to retire or anything. I'm not speaking about that. But we need to be proactive, if either through recruiting judges through the appellate courts or at the local courts. But we got to make an asserted effort to make sure we diversify our courts again. And but you don't have to comment on that, because I know you are very adamant about it. But we've got to do that the next time we come up, because this is a matter that's very dear, and I know it's dear to a lot of people, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that. Indiana should be represented better than that. We got some good judges. We got some great judges. Justice Slaughter is a great guy. Known him for all my life, but he replaced a guy who could actually feel what some people in this state sometimes feel like other people can't feel. And if we're going to have the courts represented the state of Indiana, they need to represent Hoosiers. So, but thank you, because Chief Justice has spoken to me about it, and she's making all efforts in the world, but I just want to make sure that we know that and be proactive about it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Nancy Vedic. I'm the Chief Judge of the Indiana Court of Appeals. I've been the Chief Judge for 5 years now. I'm very honored to serve my court in this capacity because I'm not sure you all know what we do. We, as Court of Appeals, we decide cases, a lot of cases, and we're really the court of last resort in many ways in the state of Indiana, because we do about 2,235 opinions per year. And when I say opinions, I mean that opinions. We aren't the highest court in the nation in terms of opinion writing as an appellate court, but we do write opinions for every case. You'll never see a court of appeals opinion that says reversed or affirmed. We tell the litigants why it is that the case is reversed or affirmed. In addition to that, we do about 7,304 orders per year. Last year we did. And this is the amazing thing and puts us as the national first, and let me repeat that again, national first, from the time that we receive a fully briefed case until the time we decide it is 1.7 months. We are an incredible, conscientious court, and we do this in a very cost-effective way. If you look at the overall budget of the state of Indiana, here we are 0.07% of the budget. It reminds me about what I'm getting in my savings account now. But it's, yeah, if it's even that much. We don't even have a slice, of the pie here. We'd be hungry if this is what we had to eat. But we're a very, very small part of the budget. But when you look at our budget details, only 5% of our expenditures are discretionary expenditures. We have personnel, 88%, and 7% fixed expenditures like rent and utilities and whatnot. So only 5% is discretionary. Of that discretionary expense, we've got a lot of expenses. This is the amount that we had last year or this year, and we have continuing legal education, travel expenses, books, replacing outdated computer equipment. We've got a lot of discretionary expenses, and we do a very, very good job of keeping within the tight restraints that we have of our budget. This will be my 3rd year now before you all, and I think that I've asked for one change package during this whole 5 years. But this year we're required to ask for a change packet, and that is for IT. And if you heard the Chief Justice and all the things that are happening with IT and technology, it's impacted us. It's great. We love computers, except for when they don't work, or they're not managed properly, or there's not proper security, or we're not trained properly in the area, it explodes. And everything now we do on our computers. It used to be that I'd walk home, going back to Valparaiso, Indiana on the weekends, and I would carry banker's boxes full of transcripts and briefs so that I would work on them at home. Now, all I need is my laptop, and from my laptop, I get transcripts, I get the trial court orders, I get the briefs, everything that I need, the legal research to be able to do the cases, which is phenomenal, except when it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, then it's downtime. And it's not only that I do it and every judge needs the computer, all of our law clerks and all of our staff. We need 2 more full-time IT resource people. We need people for our help desk to help us with, how does this work? All of a sudden it's down. We need people to help teach us as to how to use all these programs. We need a security arrangement right now to go to all of our computers so people can't hack in to the Court of Appeals private computers. We need people to help in this regard. We need hardware people, people that can help us when our hardware goes down. And as I said, this is my first time that I have requested a change package, and we really do need it. We are a very credible court. We are cited, our opinions all over the nation. I am so proud of my colleagues and the work that we do. I shouldn't probably say this here, but I bet it's been a long time, if ever, that you've heard, oh my goodness, that crazy Court of Appeals opinion. You don't get that. We are workhorses working very hard, all right, to be credible. When there's a problem with legislation, we're the first ones to call you, to let you know that there's a problem, and if there's a problem, then you can decide whether or not you want to fix it, whether we got it right or not. We've been very credible. Our job is not only to write opinions, but we really try to improve the quality of the lawyers in our community, quality of judges, and let the public know what we do. I think the best thing that you did for us was 6 years ago. You gave us all this technology to go out into the community and have traveling oral arguments. I know that some of you have been at our traveling oral arguments. I need to tell you that this year, we will have done at the end of this year 44 arguments on the road. That's not close to any other Court of Appeals in the nation. And during we have hit all but 10 counties since we've started this. And those 10 counties, we have a communications person now who's bound and determined that we're going to hit those 10 counties by the end of the year. That also needs IT support as well. We have a courtroom now that has, we have the ability to live stream our oral arguments because of you. We also have the ability to have closed caption because of you and what money that you've given us for technology. But we do need operators to help operate all these systems. Here we are. I hope this works. Is it working? It's not. See, we need an IT person to show how to go through. Well, there we go. Here are our credits. If you look and you see what we do as a Court of Appeals, someone told me, wherever I go to a legal event, here I see somebody from the Court of Appeals. If you go to a retirement ceremony, a bar association meeting, an Inns of Court, you will see us. And this is just a few of the things that we do in our role as Court of Appeals judges. We're very, very active, and we appreciate your support and would like support in the future for our IT. And I'm available for any questions. Oh, it's still running through it's unbelievable what people do. And this is, I just picked one thing for everybody. It's unbelievable what it's doing. And to say how busy we are, we don't have our new judge here, Judge Tavitas, on our court picture yet, because we haven't had an opportunity for all 15 of us to be together, and we'll have that opportunity on Thursday to just get a court picture done, because we're all over the state working hard on behalf of the people of the state of Indiana.
Mr. Chairman,
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, I think it should only be noted that I know this won't scroll up and down the screen, but one of those justices actually approved my character and fitness to be a lawyer in Indiana, so that probably should have been one of the credits on it.
Several of us are on that committee, and we love it because we get the young lawyers in and we talk to them about ethics. Yeah. And look what happened with Senator Taylor.
I won't tell you
really, no one hears that much about us unless you go into the community and you'll see we're at high schools, we're at colleges, we're at law schools, we're at Rotary clubs, we're at Inns of Court, and we don't have to do that. We could just do our cases and it'd be fine, but we don't. Every single person participates on my court. So
Any
please,
questions
any questions about the IT people?
or comments about Senator Taylor's character? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we're going to have the tax court and Martha Wentworth.
Good afternoon. You guys are speeding through the agenda today. I'm so honored to speak to you again. This is coming up on my 8th year having been on the tax court. I'm Martha Wentworth, and I'm so honored to serve the citizens of Indiana in this role. And this year, I don't even have slides, so I'm not between you and anything but whatever you're doing after this is all over. But that's because we really have not asked for anything different this year at all from the last biennium budget. The only thing we've asked for is, as the other two courts, for the cost of living increase on salaries. But let me just explain to you, I mean, I think we're the most misunderstood court in Indiana, not only in Indiana, but in the whole country, because I think we're the only court that is configured the way we are. Because I am an appellate court, because I write precedential opinions. Nonetheless, I am also a trial court, at least I have trial court duties from Department of Revenue cases. On the property tax side, I'm pretty much like Chief Judge Vadick's court. I am an appellate, truly appellate court. We have some minor differences, but nonetheless, I'm getting things in that I do a record review, but I'm also hearing evidence, hearing trials, having motions to dismiss, having motions for all sorts of discovery issues. But what I have done, especially in the last 2 years, is transform and modernize the court to bring us into a more efficient court. And let me just run through a few of those. First of all, there was a backlog when I took office. It got worse, and now it is gone. It has been gone for some time. Right now, we have 6 cases currently under advisement. And they're about 57 days average out, and our goal is always, nothing will go over 6 months, and our goal is to do we're going to get one out, I think, in 10 days, so we're doing very well in that regard. We've adopted fully, and I have to thank the Supreme Court and the Court of Appeals. They let me borrow their technology. We have no technology expert. My court administrator has learned how to stream things and we borrow a courtroom. We borrow the Court of Appeals courtroom. We're also on the road quite a bit in oral arguments because I'm the only appellate circuit rider by statute. So if someone asks me to go to one of 7 counties, I must. But we like to do it anyway to get into the areas where people would be most interested in seeing how their taxes and tax challenges go. So we use e-tools to their fullest extent. We've had dramatic changes in tax court rules. I expect more coming, but we have limited discovery, which was one of the problems with our backlog. We had discovery problems that were tying up the court's dispositions, and now we have great limitations in our rules. We have automatic briefing for property tax cases, and we have automatic disgorgement of the record by the Department of Revenue, so it doesn't have to go through interrogatories. I've initiated a common issues committee between myself and the 3 agencies that I review, And we've identified issues in procedure to make things smoother between us, and this year you're going to have some legislation in front of you that will handle the, is that IU playing? That will handle the issues that every other court like the Court of Appeals, they get their record 45 days after their decision of the lower court, or there are several, I think there are 6 agencies that directly appeal to the Court of Appeals. And in all of those cases, they get their record 45 days after the decision is made, so they can start dealing with it themselves. We do not. There's no rule for us to get a record from the Indiana Board of Tax Review or the Department of Local Government Finance with any time period. And right now we're having some struggles because it's sitting there too long. We've talked with both of those agencies, and we've worked out things that are peripheral to that, and I think we're going to shore it up with some legislation. Nonetheless, those things have all been being dealt with in the Common Issues Committee. We've also, when the Department of Local Government Finance and the Indiana Board of Tax Review were separated into what they are today, they used to be one agency, and when they split them, they gave all the heft and the rules and the statutes to the IBTR, the Indiana Board of Tax Review. And they sort of left alone the DLGF because they also hear controversies in a limited amount. They're important because they're budgets, but they hear those controversies, and there's no standard of review by statute. So my predecessor adopted the old State Board of Tax Commissioners standard, which we use today, but I would like to formalize that more and give them more procedural guidance in how to not only hold their hearings, but also in the record that they give to me for review. Other things we've been doing, and I'm giving you just the tip of the iceberg, and I promise to be brief. There are only 3 more things. We've provided we've got a draft that we've provided to the tax section of the ISBA on self-represented litigants before the tax court. That is really a necessity. A lot of our property tax appeals come from self-represented folks, and this will help them be able to navigate what seems like impossible waters. It'll also be a very good help to new lawyers who have not been in the tax court before. So it's under review right now by the ISBA Tax Council, and then it will travel up to the Rules Committee of the Supreme Court. We also found this year that we need to have better rules. We didn't have really any rules. We're developing rules for indigency in my court. Now, it doesn't seem right that you have someone that's indigent in the tax court because they have tax issues, right? So they couldn't have nothing. But we need to have people who are of modest means and can't afford to challenge what is they feel is not correct. So we are have developed a form and some standards by which to determine whether someone is indigent or not. And lastly, I have a strategic planning committee that's in development, and I'm going to make it very it's going to have strong agendas and have a short period of time. And right now I'm looking at stakeholders to help me look at what the tax court should look like in 10 years. I want to have a succession, out of that will grow succession planning for the next tax court judge, and it will try to cut off at the pass, so to speak, problems that might crop up in the future because we weren't thinking about how responsive we should be. What are the kinds of issues that we should be dealing with in the future as a tax court serving the citizens of this great state? I have nothing else to say. I didn't give you a PowerPoint, but if you want one next year, I could make one. At any rate, I'm open to any questions you might have.
Mr. Chairman, so, thank you very much. I was trying to follow you. So are you asking us for, the legislature, for assistance in getting a standard of review? Or are you able to do that yourself, so that there is a record on a timely basis and a formal system to the hearings?
I won't be asking, but I know that I have spoken with the Bar Association, and they are working on some language right now and where to put that language, and I've helped them identify that. And that would be for the 45-day requirement. So
Right.
that will already be coming to you. It's outside the budget. And then the other thing that we're working on, but I'm not quite there yet, but we're hoping to get some standards for the Department of Local Government Finance so that they have an ability to produce a better record than we're getting now. Right now, we get emails and things. They don't have a controversy. They don't have any finding of fact process that you have adversaries, saying this is one side and this is the
Right.
other.
So I know that's not a budget issue. I'm asking, though, if it's a legislative issue or it's something internally that you can do. It sounds like it's not something internal if it's a DLG FNU.
It's not something I can do in my mind because of separation of powers.
Right.
These are executive branch committees, and although I can order them to do things and make them do things, for example, they have to provide me with a record. So if they don't, I can make them at least provide me with something. But I really don't feel like I can go into monetary things or set rules for them. They have to do that for themselves.
But you're working
or-
with someone, the bar, and they're going to work, so, yeah.
Yes, I'm
okay.
working with someone, and somebody will be coming to you for your support at some point, but that's not what my intent today. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Just a note for tomorrow that we are going to meet in here again due to the technology failure across the hall. So we'll meet in here at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. So with that, we will adjourn.